Chapter 597. 3 days later, Gu Mingming and the rest returned to Sauter. Sandy and Colin carried Qixin to the stone house Gu Mingming was staying in and handed him over to her. Gu Mingming used her own blood to feed Qixin, but he still did not wake up. Gu Mingming frowned, not understanding. According to Snake's memories, her blood should have the effect of detoxifying poison. The poison that Ellie used on the little wolves should be the same. Since it could save Huda and his brothers, there was no reason why it could not save Qixin. Dylan knew that Gu Mingming had returned and rushed over immediately. After discussing with Leah, he came to see Gu Mingming. He was a little hesitant but still said, apart from Ellie's snake poison, there might be something else on little Master Qixuan's body. Gu Mingming asked, what do you mean? Dylan said, Cole is never a person who puts all his eggs in one basket. He is used to having double insurance for everything. If he dared to send little Master Qixin back to you, it means that he is confident that he will not wake up. And a suspicious person like him would not place all his hopes on others. Gu Mingming frowned, hugging Qixin as she fell into deep thought. Gu Mingming was now very clear on how Cole had presented the treasure to Snake. Snake was not a fool, he knew that Cole was only using him as an insurance mechanism, but he still sent Ellie to assist Cole. Firstly, he was only interested in the messenger of the beast deity at that time to find out some information about the other world from her, and did not care much about it. Secondly, in Snake's eyes, Cole's methods were really too lackluster. No matter what tricks Cole had up his sleeves, he would always have a way to make him send Gu Mingming to the Snake King Valley obediently. But judging from Cole's actions, he was indeed not someone who only had one set of plans for doing things. So, to save Qixin I have to find Cole? Gu Mingming thought about everything in the past, her brows furrowed. Huda and his brothers surrounded the unconscious Qixin, sniffing him and licking him. Huda nudged Qixin saying, Xin, don't sleep, hurry up and play with us? Look, Lu Wu and I have all evolved into half-beasts. You should also quickly get up. Once you wake up you can evolve. Qixin did not move and continued to lie there quietly. Jiaoyu sighed. He was clearly a young child, but he had an air of maturity about him. He lightly patted Huda's shoulder and said, don't worry, I believe that mother will definitely have a way. Kamwa ran down from the bed to Gu Mingming's side. He looked up at her and said, Mummy, how can we wake Qixin up? You are the great messenger of the beast deity, you must know, right? Gu Mingming squatted down and gently caressed her son's little face. Looking at his clear and expectant eyes, Gu Mingming still shook her head. Mummy also doesn't know how to wake Qixin up, but Mummy will definitely do my best. Believe in Mummy, alright? Kanwu nodded heavily and said, I believe in Mother. Gu Mingming smiled. When her gaze met Qixuan's, she frowned again. Chapter 598. Gu Mingming was stunned for a moment before her eyes suddenly lit up. She hugged Kanwu and kissed him. You are indeed my son. So smart. Kanwu was bewildered by the kiss and blushed for a while. She pretended to be calm and said, Of course. With that, Kanwu ran back to Huda and the rest and surrounded Qixin, trying to wake him up. Gu Mingming asked Leah to send Dylan off, before walking into another room and lying on the bed. Elvis accompanied her over. Seeing that she was lying down, he asked, Do you want to sleep for a while? I'll wake you up when Leah is done with dinner. Gu Mingming shook her head. When I was unconscious, I dreamed of the beast deity. Elvis frowned and said, Is there a deviation in your behavior? Which part? Elvis's nervousness stemmed from the analysis Leah had given him. The beast deity had pointed out and corrected the messengers' deviations in their actions in the dream realm. If the messengers did not make any changes or make amends to reverse their mistakes, they might very well anger the beast deity and be punished. He was extremely afraid of that punishment because no matter what it was, he could not let Gu Mingming get hurt. So, if there was any deviation in Gu Mingming's actions, even if she asked him to dig Snake up and die in his place, he would definitely do it. Gu Mingming patted Elvis's arm lightly, signaling him not to be nervous. Then she said calmly, He is not here to warn me but to greet me. He also told me to maintain a kind heart. Elvis looked at Gu Mingming doubtfully and asked, Are you sure? Did you miss anything? Gu Mingming shook her head and said, I won't. You also know that after I inherited Snake's ability, my memory became especially good. Elvis thought about it and felt slightly more at ease. He held Gu Mingming's little hand and asked, So you want to look for the beast deity in your dreams again and ask for advice on how to save Qixin? Gu Mingming nodded. Elvis was a little dejected. He sighed and said, I used to think that I could do anything, but why do I always feel helpless now? Dream. How good would it be if I could follow you into the dream? Gu Mingming chuckled. Hubby, you have already done very well. Gu Mingming knew that Elvis's confidence had been destroyed by Snake until there was nothing left. Especially after Ellie's suicide attack, Elvis had been shrouded in a sense of helplessness. Unfortunately, at this moment there was a fox on her ear. Gu Mingming felt apologetic and guilty towards Elvis, but she did not know how to comfort him. Forget it, I'll deal with my son first. Gu Mingming allowed Elvis to hold her hand. She then slowly closed her eyes and said, Hubby, I feel very relieved that you can stay by my side and accompany me. Elvis slowly bent down and planted a kiss on Gu Mingming's forehead. I will always be by your side. Gu Mingming nodded. The sunlight shone through the window gently onto Gu Mingming's face. It was warm and comfortable. Elvis's warmth could be felt from her palm, full of support. Gu Mingming gradually fell asleep in a very peaceful environment. Her faith supported her to find that white fog no matter what. Gu Mingming's brows were tightly furrowed as she fell asleep. Chapter 599. Gradually, Gu Mingming's vision was filled with a blurry and hazy whiteness. Gu Mingming tried shouting, Beast deity? Beast deity? There was no reply, not even an echo. It was dead silent and lifeless. Gu Mingming groped her way deeper into the fog, but other than the white fog she could not see anything else. Beast deity? Beast deity? Gu Mingming continued shouting but still received no reply. Gu Mingming frowned. Did she walk into the wrong door or was the beast deity not at home? Just as she was feeling suspicious, a cold hug enveloped Gu Mingming from behind. Gu Mingming was taken aback and instinctively released her beast pressure, but the person behind her was not overwhelmed by it. Instead he chuckled and said, Not bad. You know how to use the weapon I left for you to protect yourself. Gu Mingming was taken aback and her whole body froze, unable to move. Tu Ming. With that, a hand reached out from behind Gu Mingming, palm facing up, in front of Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming raised her trembling hand and clenched it into a fist, slowly placing her little hand on that palm. Was it magical? Just by hearing the voice and looking at that hand, Gu Mingming could actually recognize who was hugging her. Snake? Is that you? Gu Mingming did not turn back, only asking softly. The large hand closed gently, firmly holding Gu Mingming's little hand in his palm. Then with a light pull, Gu Mingming spun half around, standing face to face with the person behind her. Looking up, Gu Mingming saw that familiar devil-like face. His dark green eyes were shining with a cold light, but Gu Mingming did not feel afraid anymore. That natural aura and arrogant stance only made Gu Mingming feel at ease. She took the initiative to jump into Snake's arms, and the tears that Gu Mingming had been holding in since she woke up finally fell. Snake was taken aback. He held Gu Mingming's little chin and asked, You were already ugly, but you look even uglier when you cry. I will cry, I will be ugly. If you don't like it, don't look. Gu Mingming was a little willful, deliberately crying even louder and uglier. Snake's gaze was gentle as he caressed Gu Mingming's little face and said, I like you no matter how ugly you are. You know, you're the only color in my eyes. Hearing Snake's words, Gu Mingming stopped crying. She sniffled and lowered her head to avoid Snake's gaze. She said softly, Liking me is probably the most unfortunate thing in your life. This is the first time in 1,000 years that I've met with misfortune. In the end I lost my life. You shouldn't have saved me in the first place. Just let me fall from the sky and die. Snake pinched Gu Mingming's little face and said, Meeting you is not something unlucky. The beast deity pitted me for being shackled for 1,000 years and sent you to save me. It's just that. I can't bear to force 1,000 years of loneliness on you. Gu Mingming looked up and said, Then why don't you discuss with the beast deity and come back? I'll return everything to you. Will you come back? Snake chuckled and said, Yes, I can't go back. But the beast deity promised me that as compensation, he would let me find you in another world. Gu Mingming sniffled and asked, What do you mean? Snake cupped Gu Mingming's little face and bent down to accommodate her height. He looked straight into her eyes and answered, I will go to your world and find you before you transmigrate. I'll enjoy you all to myself. Digression. This can be considered a preview. At the end of this article, I will release a digression saying that Snake was reborn into the era that Gu Mingming was in. Then, as a modern person, he wooed the pre-transmigrated Gu Mingming and made her stay in the modern world. From a timeline perspective, this matter is not valid. Because if Snake had stopped Gu Mingming from transmigrating, then he would not have gotten to know Gu Mingming and would not have been reborn. But, yeah, let's just treat it as the concept of a parallel universe. Snake is a character that makes my heart ache. I will tell everyone without hesitation that in the entire article, Snake is the one who makes my heart ache the most. Compared to Snake, what does torturing Leah previously count as? Chapter 600. Gu Mingming's eyes were watery as if she didn't quite understand what Snake meant. Snake smiled as he pinched Gu Mingming's little face. So, I am freed from this shackle. To me, death means that my happiness has just begun. Taming, I left everything to you not to let you live on for me, but to let you live on properly. Don't use your messy memories to mess up your life, just live on your own terms. Laugh when you're happy, cry when you're sad, fight back if someone bullies you, kill if someone plots against you. This is the reason why I left everything to you. My Taming is still most suited to be carefree. Gu Mingming's nose felt sour as she punched Snake's chest. Are you praising me? Why does it sound so awkward? Snake held onto Gu Mingming's little fist, placing it in his hand carefully, as if he was admiring a precious piece of art. As if he wanted to remember every line on Gu Mingming's palm, he looked at it carefully and seriously, then said, I don't have much time, so you have to remember my words well. Gu Mingming nodded, pursed her lips and didn't say a word, quietly listening to Snake's confession. After I injected my abilities into your body, I shared your memories. I know from beginning to end, you treat me as a friend, not as a male. Although it's a pity, it's too late to change anything. In that world after I found you, I will never let such a thing happen again. Gu Mingming looked up at Snake with her sparkling eyes. Snake, I like you. Snake was stunned for a moment, then he smiled. My Taming is so soft-hearted and gentle. I know it's fake, but I still thank you for saying that. Gu Mingming shook her head, wanting to explain. But Snake didn't give her the chance, his body had already started to become transparent. Snake seized the time to explain, you are Gu Mingming, not Snake. Be it the Snake King Valley or Wabi, it's not your responsibility. You have no need or obligation to act as my substitute in front of them. Live your own life, use my powers, and protect yourself well. Taming? I like you, Taming. Thank you, Taming. Goodbye, Taming. Snake completely disappeared before Gu Mingming's eyes. No matter how hard Gu Mingming tried to grab at him, she could not find a single trace of him. Her chest tightened as she squatted on the ground, wailing loudly. Don't you like Snake? Did she only see him as a friend? That's right, before Snake shared a memory with her, she really only saw Snake as a friend. But later on, when she obtained Snake's memories, she clearly knew how much Snake liked her and how much he treasured her. All the good things he did for her, every scene of the two of them together was like a movie that was destined to separate, replaying in her mind. The sweeter it was then, the sadder the ending was. Gu Mingming knelt on the ground and shouted, Snake, I don't dislike you. I just didn't have time to tell you. I like you. I like you. I like you. Chapter 601. I'm here. Where is he going to find me? Gu Mingming roared. That person was still very gentle and said with a loving voice, he will go to your original world to find you before you transmigrated. He will be happy, so don't cry, alright? Gu Mingming wiped her tears and finally saw the person in front of her clearly. He did not have a white beard or hair and looked to be in his 30s. But his eyes were as tolerant and calm as the ocean. It was a kind of wisdom and an indescribable love. You are the beast deity? Gu Mingming asked. The man nodded and said, yes, it's my first time meeting you, my daughter. Gu Mingming blushed and burped. She sniffled and asked, you know I was spouting nonsense in the beast world? The man chuckled and said, how is it nonsense? If you are willing to be my daughter, then you are my daughter. I don't mind. Gu Mingming sniffled and tilted her head. I mind. The man did not insist and said, I know you came to find me because of Qishuan's matter. But I can't help you. Gu Mingming was stunned for a moment before she immediately knelt down and hugged the man's arm. Father, you are my biological father. You have to save your grandson. The man did not know whether to laugh or cry at Gu Mingming's reaction. He gently rubbed her little head and said, it's not that I don't want to save him, but the people of the beast world have their ways. If I forcefully interfere, it will only make things worse. All I can do is to guide him. Gu Mingming looked up and said, can you speak like a human? I don't understand. The beast deity was silent for a moment before he sat cross-legged beside Gu Mingming and said, you inherited Snake's memories, so you should know about the previous messenger of the beast deity? Gu Mingming nodded and said, yeah, I know some parts. It probably started after she found Snake's father. I don't know what happened before that. The beast deity still looked like he wanted to smile but did not. He strangely exuded the light of a deity who loved the world. Gu Mingming sat beside him and felt like she was about to convert to Buddha. The previous messenger of the beast deity is called Wang Xiaoxin. In your world, she is the honorary advisor of the Book of Changes Association. The reason I chose her back then was because she had a deep understanding of metaphysics, and her mission is to bring faith to the beast world. Gu Mingming digested the beast deity's words. Actually, before this living beast deity appeared in front of her, Gu Mingming was an absolute atheist. She never believed in gods or Buddhas. Otherwise, why didn't the gods and Buddhas show up to help her when she was suffering all those years ago? She thought that she was a kind person and had never done anything evil, but she was going to be abandoned by her parents and live a life of hunger and cold. But now, there was a living god sitting in front of her, surrounded by a halo, sitting cross-legged in front of her, chatting and explaining to her in a down-to-earth manner. This made Gu Mingming start to waver. Could she still say that there was no god in this world? Then who the F***ck was sitting in front of him? But even though she was shaken, the so-called metaphysics was just a scam in her heart. An honorary advisor of the Book of Changes Association? He's just a film that says what people say and what ghosts say. Chapter 602. F******. Gu Mingming looked at the beast deity with a sullen expression. Are you mocking me for being a bad student? The beast deity shook his head gently. Of course not. I'm telling you why I can't save Qixian. Gu Mingming pursed her lips. For her son, she would not mind even if he said she was born an idiot, much less mocking her for being bad at her studies. The beast deity continued smiling. When she came to the beast world, she was competing with a few top psychologists in hypnosis. Gu Mingming looked at the beast deity in surprise. Can hypnosis be competed? Find a few people and see who can rush the others first? The beast deity shook his head. There was a few hypnotist masters. They entered the same room at the same time and hypnotized each other. They were all professionals. It was not an easy task for anyone to hypnotize anyone else. A few authoritative figures who refused to submit to each other used this method to determine the winner. It was a little like a sword fight on Mount Hua, right? Gu Mingming glanced sideways at the beast deity. She chuckled. Deities also watch television dramas? Are you also a Jin Yong fan? The beast deity rubbed his nose. I want to choose a suitable person from that world to guide the people of the beast world. How can I do that without doing some research on that world? Gu Mingming snorted. Your method of research is watching television dramas? The beast deity cleared his throat. He was clearly a little embarrassed. But he was not angry. He continued. I used that hypnosis to bring Wang Xiaoxin to the beast world. But she thought that everything in the beast world was just the effects of hypnosis. She fought with all her might, trying to wake up from the hypnosis. She tried to find a way to free herself. In her eyes, she believed that everyone was a hallucination in the hypnosis. Gu Mingming frowned. She recalled Wang Xiaoxin's resolute and merciless attitude towards everyone in her memory. So it was not because she was cruel by nature, but because she believed that everything was an illusion. All the things she was unwilling to do, but still did, in the hope that she would not be able to withstand the torture and force herself to wake up? The beast deity continued. Afterwards, she became more and more crazy. If she was allowed to continue, she would destroy the entire beast world. So, I entered her dream and told her the way to free herself from this hypnosis. As long as she can do it, I will let her go. Gu Mingming's understanding of hypnosis was limited to the scenes in television dramas, such as forcing someone with amnesia to recall some past they did not want to face, changing other people's lives, and hypnotizing that damn fatty to dance in The Return of the Condor Heroes. The beast deity said, she believed my words and thought that this was the key to breaking the hypnosis. So she did everything I asked of her. It's just that, he used the most ruthless and cruel method. Gu Mingming looked up and said, for example, having a son with the bloodline of a beast king with a cold-blooded snake beast, then using him as a key to transmigrate back to the present world. The beast deity nodded and said, in the end, I still overestimated the term maternal love. It turns out that TV dramas are all lies. Not all mothers are willing to change themselves for their children. Chapter 603. The beast deity shook his head and said, she is an expert in psychology. Even if it was me, she would be able to tell if I lied in front of her. So what happened to Snake is true. Gu Mingming frowned and remained silent for a while before asking, so, did she go back? The beast deity looked at Gu Mingming quietly and shook his head again. She stayed behind for Snake's father. Gu Mingming stared at the beast deity in shock and frowned. Didn't she think that everything was an illusion? She could even bear to leave her own son, how could she? The beast deity was still smiling, but there was a tinge of disappointment in his smile. He said, "Are you interested to hear what happened after Snake was born?" Gu Mingming bit her lower lip but still nodded. The beast deity said, "Snake's memory should have stopped when his father threw him into the cold lake?" Gu Mingming nodded to acknowledge it. The beast deity continued. His father threw the snake egg into the cold lake in front of Wang Xiaoxin and told her that he was different from other males. He would not let her leave him just to grieve in silence because of her desire. He said that since Wang Xiaoxin had provoked him, she could forget about shaking him off for the rest of her life. If Wang Xiaoxin wants to go back, she can either bring him along or kill him. Gu Mingming lowered her eyes and remained silent for a moment. She thought of the black wolf at home. He had said something similar. "If this is a dream, please kill me before I wake up. Don't let me face a world without you alone. That is more torturous than death." The beast deity paused for a moment and did not continue. He just looked at Gu Mingming, who seemed to be deep in thought, as if giving her time to slowly recall. After a long while, Gu Mingming finally opened her mouth and said, since she was sure that everything was a hallucination after the hypnosis, then once she wakes up, Snake's father will definitely disappear. No one can bring a person from a hallucination into reality. If Wang Xiaoxin is a rational person, she will definitely think of this. Bring him away, impossible. Kill, reluctant. So she decided to stay behind? The beast deity chuckled and shook his head. No, she decided to kill him. Gu Mingming was stunned. She looked up at the beast deity and asked, "You clearly said that she stayed behind for Snake's father." The beast deity gave Gu Mingming a reassuring smile before continuing. She personally plucked off the scales protecting Snake's father's heart, then used her sharp claws to pierce through his chest. Snake's father's blood splattered all over Wang Xiaoxin's face. Wang Xiaoxin stared at the bloody hole in his chest and her own bloodied hand. On the other hand, Snake's father smiled and hugged her in his arms, kissing her tears and saying to her, "This is good too, at least, until death I did not lose you." Gu Mingming widened her eyes, unable to say a word. Having inherited Snake's memories, she knew very well how stubborn the males in the beast world were towards love. Compared to death, they were more afraid of their beloved females being harmed. Back then, when Barit and Quinton knelt on the platform of the deity's punishment, they would rather be dried and skinned than move, because they were afraid that the person in their hearts would be punished. Later on, it was the same for Snake. Although Ellie's last bite was the poison from her suicide, Snake actually had a way to neutralize it. Aside from the topic, today's update was over. Chapter 604. However, the process of detoxification was a little complicated, and she would have to endure the pain of the poison for a long time. Furthermore, even if the poison was detoxified without the self-healing ability of a beast king, her legs would still be crippled. So Snake gave his life to her not to ensure that she would not die, but because he could not bear to let her suffer, that's all. Gu Mingming remained silent and did not speak. She only felt a tightness in her chest. She couldn't tell if it was because of Snake or because of Snake's memory reacting to the entanglement between her father and mother. The beast deity patted Gu Mingming's shoulder lightly, then continued, "The death of Snake's father was a huge blow to Wang Xiaoxin. She didn't understand why she felt so sad and painful even though she knew it was an illusion. At that time she was ill and couldn't get up. She closed her eyes but couldn't sleep. I knew that she wanted to sleep so that she could see me, so I helped her sleep and let her enter the dreamland to find me." Gu Mingming looked up at the beast deity, waiting for his next words. A trace of melancholy appeared on the beast god's face. He sighed and continued, "She asked me if all of this was an illusion. I repeated what I had told her the first time we met. I told her that the serpent's egg was not broken. It was at the bottom of the cold pond. If she wanted to go back, I could help her retrieve the egg. But she shook her head. She said she wasn't going back, she wanted to stay in the beast world." Gu Mingming looked at the beast deity in confusion. She did not understand what Wang Xiaoxin was thinking. In order to go back, she would not hesitate to use her own son as a key. In order to return, she did not hesitate to kill her own male. But when everything was ready, she still wanted to stay. The beast deity looked at Gu Mingming and asked, "Unbelievable, right? I also feel very strange." So I asked her why she decided to stay. Her answer was, "I want to avenge whales." Gu Mingming looked at the beast deity speechlessly. The beast deity just smiled back at her quietly and said, "Whales is Snake's father, Wang Xiaoxin's male snake beast." Gu Mingming replied, "But didn't she kill him with her own hands? Who else do you want to take revenge on?" The beast deity nodded and smiled bitterly. "Look for herself." Gu Mingming was stunned as she looked at the beast deity in confusion. The beast deity continued. On one hand, she firmly believed that the beast world was an illusion. On the other hand, she was so tormented by Whale's death that she could not breathe. Her rationality told her that as long as she got rid of this hypnosis, she would be able to free herself from Whale's death. This was because after she woke up, she would gradually forget everything in the dream. But she realized that she wasn't willing to forget Whale's. Even if the end result of her memories was this kind of torture, she still wanted to remember Whale's and wasn't willing to erase him from her heart. So he stayed and tortured himself to take revenge for Whale's. Gu Mingming froze, and when she looked up, her face was already covered in tears. She asked the beast deity in a choked voice, "So, Snake came to see me just now because he was afraid that I would torture myself like Wang Xiaoxin." It was not a question but a statement. Chapter 605. The beast deity gently wiped away the tears on Gu Mingming's face and said, "Since you understand his painstaking efforts, all the more you should pull yourself together. He will not be at ease if you cry like this." Gu Mingming slapped the beast deity's hand away and roared, "Then return him to me. Aren't you the beast deity? You should be able to bring the dead back to life, right?" The beast deity sighed and said, "Do you still not understand? I can't just interfere with the matters of the beast world." Gu Mingming said, "I don't understand." The beast deity said, "If I had not interfered back then and told Wang Xiaoxin that the beast king who is related by blood could become her key to transmigrating back, then the things that happened later would not have happened. She would still have met Whales and given birth to Snake, but she would not have pierced Whale's chest with her claws. Perhaps she would have loved her child like those mothers in television dramas and willingly stayed behind to become a better guide. In these 1,000 years, I have been reflecting on this matter, but I still could not help but interfere with the matters of the beast world a few times. In the end, all the matters that I interfered with did not develop in the direction that I had hoped for, and the ending became increasingly bleak. This made me finally understand that everything in this world has its own trajectory. Destroying the original trajectory will not change things for the better and will only lead to destruction." Gu Mingming stared coldly at the beast deity and said, "So you are just a damn television watcher. Everyone in the beast world is a serial on the television. Other than watching, you can't turn off anything else, right? You won't care whether others live or die or how tragic their lives are, right?" The beast deity hesitated for a moment before nodding. Gu Mingming said, "Then what kind of god are you?" The beast deity was still smiling gently and said, "If a god has to solve every suffering, then what should a god do when he encounters suffering? All I can do is to guide him." Gu Mingming stood up immediately and said, "What the hell did you guide him about? You just guided Wang Xiaoxin to kill her husband and son and finally torture herself to death?" The beast deity lowered his head and said, "Wang Xiaoxin brought faith to the beast world and you brought hope to the beast world." Gu Mingming roared, "Hope my ass. I'm king in despair myself. Who else can I give hope to? My son is unconscious now and I don't know if he's dead or alive. I don't need him to recover immediately. Just tell me if there's a way to save him. But you're not even willing to tell me a way and you're still talking to me about hope?" The beast deity looked up and accepted Gu Mingming's rebuke with a calm expression. He waited for her to finish her sentence like a machine gun before he said softly, "I can tell you how to wake Qixin up, but it will only result in him living a life worse than death. It may even implicate more people you care about. For example, Elvis, Leah, and the other 3 little wolves. Do you still want an answer that will make everyone suffer?" Stunned, Gu Mingming bit her lower lip tightly. If he had said that he would make her pay a terrible price in exchange for Qixuan's awakening, she would have agreed without hesitation. But why did it have to be Elvis, Leah, Hada and his brothers, and even Qixin himself who suffered a fate worse than death? The beast deity was still smiling kindly. "Don't worry, trust me. I will not let my grandson die like this. You will find a way to save Qixin even if I don't tell you." Aside. Chapter 606. Gu Mingming was stunned. She even forgot about her tears as she stared at the beast deity. "Really?" The beast deity nodded. "Deities cannot lie. I can guide you, but I cannot give you an answer. As long as you have a benevolent heart, you will definitely find a way to save Qixin. Moreover, don't you have 2 males by your side who are willing to risk their lives for you? They will not bear to let you be so upset." Gu Mingming was skeptical. "Then, how long will Qixin be unconscious for?" The beast deity shook his head. I don't know either. It all depends on how hard you work." Gu Mingming clenched her fists. "I wonder what level the mighty beast deity is at? Can you take a beating from me who has the strength of a beast king?" The beast deity was taken aback. He suddenly laughed. This is a dream. Your Beast King powers cannot be used here. Moreover, I am just an illusion. You cannot hit me. Gu Mingming raised her brows. She swung her fist at the beast deity in disbelief. Indeed, it was as if she was waving her fist in the air. There was no resistance at all. But a wave of dizziness soon followed. Gu Mingming felt herself falling downwards. The beast deity's calm and amiable voice rang out above her head. Don't worry, don't be afraid. Your father beast is with you. I am with you. Gu Mingming sat up with a loud roar. Her eyes were bloodshot and looked frighteningly hideous. Mingming? Leah gently tugged at Gu Mingming's little hand. His face was full of worry. Are you all right? Gu Mingming looked at Leah, then at Elvis, who was standing by the bed with a face full of worry. She was stunned for a long while before she regained her senses. Closing her eyes, Gu Mingming leaned her head against Leah's chest. One of her hands was held by Leah. She used the other to gently massage her temples. I am fine. I just had a dream. Leah stood up and knelt behind Gu Mingming. Then he gently rubbed Gu Mingming's temples with both hands. Elvis sat in Lee's seat and held Gu Mingming's hand, saying, You slept for 2.5 days crying and screaming, and woke up shouting damn you, and you still say you're fine? Gu Mingming clenched her teeth and said, It's nothing, I am just going to see the beast deity. This old thing actually used official language to brush me off. Leah stopped rubbing Gu Mingming's temples and asked hesitantly, Did he do anything bad to you? Gu Mingming lowered her head and did not say a word, her face gloomy. Leah bit his lower lip and said, Is our family going to have another new male? Gu Mingming was taken aback. She looked up at Leah with a face full of question marks. There was a tinge of jealousy in Lee's long and narrow eyes. He said with some resentment, In your dream, you cried and said that you liked him and asked the beast deity to return him to you. You cried so loudly. Tell me, which male did the beast deity show you in your dream to make you fall in love with him so much after one night of sleep? I will help you find him. Gu Mingming's expression darkened. She lowered her head and kept silent for a long time before saying, I saw Snake in my dream. He came to bid farewell to me. Elvis and Leah were also stunned at the mention of Snake. That person, even if they could really become a beast king in the future, they would never have the chance to win him. They would forever be the weaklings who would be intimidated by a single glance from him and be unable to stand up. Chapter 607. Gu Mingming repeated what happened in her dream to Elvis and Leah and came to a conclusion. Wait. Elvis and Leah worshipped the beast deity blindly. They said that since the beast deity said that he would guide her, then they should just wait for him to guide them. Gu Mingming was frustrated, but she could not think of a better solution other than waiting. Rubbing her temples, Gu Mingming asked, Did anything happen during the 2 days I was asleep? Leah and Elvis exchanged glances before Elvis said, 3 wolf pups came to see you, but I chased them away. Gu Mingming looked up at Elvis. Elvis cleared his throat and said, I think you didn't want them to worry for nothing, so I just said that you were frightened in the Snake King Valley and it was too tiring for you to rush back, so you slept for a while longer and asked them not to disturb your sleep. Gu Mingming thought about it and felt that Elvis's way of handling things was right, so she nodded and did not pursue the matter. Leah continued, During the time we were in the Snake King Valley, the people from the Snow Fox tribe were not very well behaved. Gu Mingming looked at Leah and asked, Why? Want to overthrow me and welcome Cole back? Leah was taken aback and did not understand why Gu Mingming would think that way. He just shook his head and said, No, they felt that the people from St. Nazir must have some esoterica that you left behind, so they forced Oakley to hand it over. Oakley took advantage of the situation and used this esoterica to threaten the few stubborn old foxes from the Snow Fox tribe. With Oriton and Barit's protection, nothing big happened, but there were many conflicts between the two tribes. The males were fine, but the females from the Snow Fox tribe and the females from St. Nazir, the smell of gunpowder was a little too strong. I heard that there were already a few fights and there were casualties on both sides. Gu Mingming rubbed her temples and felt helpless. She originally thought that they were going to act fighting the Qing and restoring the Ming, but in the end they were going to act, why do women make things difficult for women? Gu Mingming knew that although Leah was the witch doctor of the tribe, she had been gone for a month, and if she did not show up for all the trivial matters that had accumulated, Leah would have to spend 10 or even 20 times more effort to settle them. Sighing, Gu Mingming invited the few tribe elders into the meeting room. Gu Mingming sat on the main seat while Elvis and Leah stood on both sides. Barit and Oriton stood below Elvis, not saying a word. They just stood there quietly. Ian's injuries were slightly lighter than Elvis's and Lee's, so he was more or less recovered now. However, his face still looked sickly and listless, but he exuded a cold aura which made others not dare to belittle him. Standing not far below Leah, he looked down at the few snow fox elders standing opposite Gu Mengmeng, who were clearly feeling uneasy. Gu Mengmeng chuckled. "Elders, you have worked hard during the 1 month that I was not around." The old men exchanged glances before one of them took a step forward and said, "It is our duty to share the burden of the great emissary. I don't dare to say that it was tough." Gu Mengmeng chuckled. Ever since she had a nap, why was it so annoying for people to talk official language to her? Chapter 608. This was the first time the elders saw Gu Mengmeng after she returned. If their previous apprehension and obedience towards Gu Mengmeng was because of her title as the messenger of the beast deity, now this fear was because of Gu Mengmeng herself. She was still the same person, smaller and more exquisite. But that pair of clear eyes was no longer as lively and clean as before, but emptiness. Yes, it was emptiness. An emptiness with no regard for anything. When Gu Mengmeng chased Cole away, the few elders were still complacent, thinking that this new messenger, who had her emotions written all over her face, was much easier to control than Cole, who was always elegant and never procrastinated. But now they realized that they were wrong. Was it because Gu Mengmeng had concealed herself too well in the past, or had some earth-shattering changes happened in this 1 month? It was just 1 month. What changes could there be? That was... The few elders exchanged glances and within a breath's time, they had reached a consensus. Gu Mengmeng was a scheming person. All her previous naivety was just a facade. Was it a test? Gu Mengmeng went to the Snake King Valley to hand over the unstable solder to a mere second-level orc, Oakley, and left behind 2 third-level orcs to assist in suppressing the situation, before bringing Elvis and Leah away without any worries. All this was just a test? The few elders' knees gave way and they knelt onto the ground with a thud. Their bodies started to tremble uncontrollably as they thought to themselves, "Miscalculation, miscalculation. Great messenger, please calm down, we just want to worship the esoterica properly, we don't have any other intentions." One of the elders said with a guilty conscience. He himself did not know why, but now that he was standing in front of Gu Mengmeng, it was hard for him to maintain his composure. An oppressive feeling spread throughout the entire space, making it hard for him to breathe. Gu Mengmeng laughed and said, "Worship? Ha, I remember that the rule is that only the leader and witch doctor can inherit the esoterica, right?" The elder did not dare to raise his head and only nodded in agreement. Gu Mengmeng continued, "I have already brought the leader and witch doctor away, what rights do you have to worship the esoterica?" The elder was at a loss for words. How would he have the guts to say that he thought Gu Mengmeng, Elvis and Leah might not be able to return, so he dared to force Oakley to hand over the esoterica. Gu Mengmeng saw that the elder did not speak and laughed coldly. "Moreover, even if I place the esoterica in front of you, do you know what it says? The Exalted One is unbelievably stupid." The elder's body grew colder with every word Gu Mengmeng said. In the end, he trembled so hard that he did not dare to raise his head. Gu Mengmeng did not have the patience to waste her breath on these stubborn old fogies. 1,000 years of experience and stability had caused a huge change in her calmness. No matter how Snake tried to persuade her not to use his identity to think, those 1,000 years of memories had already fused into her body and were starting to affect her personality. If it was in the past, Gu Mengmeng would have stomped her feet in anger at these fellows who took advantage of their seniority. Then she would watch Elvis or Leah solve these problems for her before turning around to coax her. But now she only felt that these people were childish and boring. It was neither funny nor infuriating. His emotions were as calm as an ancient well, without any ripples. Chapter 609. Gu Mengmeng's words were just a calm and slow statement, but the few elders were sweating profusely, as if it was a cold and despairing threat. Yes. The elders expressed their allegiance from the bottom of their hearts, and then they retreated. Before leaving, one of the elders plucked up the courage to sneak a peek at Gu Mengmeng. After confirming that he saw the snow fox mark on her ear, he heaved a sigh of relief and followed the rest out. Gu Mengmeng rubbed her temples, her expression cold. Leah sat beside Gu Mengmeng gently, pulling her head towards his chest. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders and rubbed her temples gently, saying, "Are you tired? Actually, you can just leave these things to me." Gu Mengmeng shook her head and said, "You and Elvis were already severely injured in the Snake King Valley, and had been controlled by snake venom all this while, so your bodies have not been able to recover to their best state, and you were poisoned again because of the mating incident, which was simply one disaster after another." Gu Mingming frowned. She really did not know if this selfish habit was passed on to her by Snake, or was it just her nature. In order to not let herself have any regrets, to make herself feel better, she did not care whether Li's body could take it, and just mated with him. Although it was just a drop of blood from the tip of the tongue, and the poison had been detoxified in time, but Leah at that time was probably physically and mentally exhausted, and was at his weakest. Looking at Elvis, Gu Mingming did not mention the mating incident again in the end. She just said, "And how can you be as influential as me? I only need to reprimand you a few words to achieve the desired effect. Why do you need to spend so much effort to plan?" Leah chuckled, alluring and moving, hooked Gu Mingming's chin lightly, his eyes filled with deep affection, asking, "Is this because your heart aches for me and you can't bear to see me work so hard?" Gu Mingming tried her best to smile, replying with a single sound, "Yeah." Leah kissed Gu Mingming's lips lightly, just a light peck on her lips, like a dragonfly skimming the water surface before letting go. "Sandy has been here for a long time and is waiting for you outside. Do you want to meet him?" Gu Mingming thought about it but still nodded. "Shall we accompany you?" Leah asked. Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "There are too many things piled up in the tribe. You and Elvis should go and do your own things. Settle everything here as soon as possible. I want to return to Saint Nazaire." Leah nodded and gently rubbed Gu Mingming's little head. He then looked at Oriton and said, "Go and accompany her." Oriton was expressionless and did not reply. He just walked a few steps forward silently and stood beside Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "No need." Sauter had 1,000 things waiting to be done and everything needed manpower to be arranged. "I see that those troublemakers from the Snow Fox clan are quite afraid of Oriton. Let him stay behind to help you deal with things." Leah did not say anything and just looked at Gu Mingming quietly. Gu Mingming looked down at her own hands. She did not know if it was an illusion, but she felt that her hands were much colder than before. Chapter 610. Gu Mingming did it unintentionally, but her words had suppressed all the males present to the point that they could not even lift their heads. She did not know if it was because her emotions were getting colder, or because she had something on her mind that she did not pay much attention to it, but for the first time, Gu Mingming ignored Elvis and Li's emotions. She just lowered her head and walked out of the meeting room. Cole was a 5th-level beast. Elvis was the only 5th-level beast in this room full of people, and he had to use the backfire of the mating contract to defeat Cole. Not mentioning the 3rd-level Leah, Oriton and Barit, there was no need to mention the 1st-level Oakley. Was their protection unnecessary to her now? Until Gu Mingming's figure completely disappeared from everyone's sight, Elvis and Leah kept their usual, smiling faces. They frowned deeply and their gazes dimmed. "She's forcing herself," Elvis muttered softly. Li's lips were tightly pursed, his long and narrow eyes were no longer filled with emotions, only worry. "I'm afraid that if she continues to hold it in, she will fall sick." Elvis looked at Leah and said, "Do you have any way to let her vent it out? She can cry or throw a tantrum if it really doesn't work. I can fight with her." Leah chuckled and glanced sideways, asking, "Fight? Can you bear to do it?" Elvis frowned, pondered for a moment and shook his head. Even if he was not Gu Mingming's match now, and even if Gu Mingming accidentally revealed a little of her beast pressure, he would instinctively feel fear. But he still felt heartache towards Gu Mingming, asking him to extend his claws and fangs at Gu Mingming, not to mention others. Even he himself did not believe that he could do it. But Gu Mingming's emotions were too well hidden. This made him very flustered, very uneasy and very heartache. When she first woke up, Gu Mingming's face was still filled with sorrow and sadness. As time passed, more and more of Snake's memories were awakened in Gu Mingming's body. Gu Mingming's expression became calmer and her emotions became more and more restrained. A person who always showed everything on her face had now become cold, just like him and Leah in the past. Clenching his fists, Elvis said, "If I can't bear to do it, then let her beat me up. As long as she can spit out the anger in her heart, even if she beats me to death, I will still smile." Leah patted Elvis's shoulder lightly and said, "If killing a few people can make Mingming happy, then I'll go with you and let her kill both of us. It'll be a worthy death. But you clearly know that Mingming is not a male. Violence and killing will not make her happy." Elvis sighed and nodded. These few days, even Huda and the other two could not make her happy. "I'm really afraid that she won't be able to hold on if this continues." Li's gaze was also gloomy as he frowned. "Every time Mingming is together with Sandy, she is always in a good mood. I hope this time Sandy can also make Mingming happier." Elvis glanced sideways and asked, You called Sandy over? Leah smiled bitterly. Isn't it sad? A pet that ascends by pleasing a female doesn't even have a way to make her happy. I have to rely on another female to coax my own. I'm such a good-for-nothing pet. Chapter 6:11. After Elvis finished speaking, he directly walked past Leah. Leah looked at Elvis's back view and smiled. That's why you are Ming Ming's first partner. If it was me, I might not be able to be as tolerant as you. Swaying his tail, Leah glanced sideways at Barit, Oriton and Oakley who had been standing silently behind him. My two guardians and acting witch doctor, are you still in a daze? The three who were called looked up at Leah in silence, each with their own thoughts written clearly on their faces. Leah chuckled, although Ming Ming is very powerful now, this is not a reason for you to neglect taking care of her. Put away that useless inferiority complex and find a new position for yourself. With that, Leah swayed his large tail and chased after Elvis. Reposition? In the past, the most important task was to protect Gu Mingming's safety. But now it seemed like there was no need. In that case, where exactly should their new position be? On the other side, Gu Mingming sat on the stairs outside the stone house, looking at Sandy who was feeling rather uneasy. She knew that they could no longer go back. Her mentality had changed along with the 1,000 years of memories. She hadn't forgotten Sandy, but she couldn't play around with her like before. Cupping her face, teasing her that she was the most beautiful female in the world and if she was a male, she would definitely marry her. Now she could no longer say those words. And after that incident, Sandy had stopped Colin from saving Gu Mingming. Even though Gu Mingming did not blame her, she still felt extremely guilty. After that incident, Colin was relieved of his duties as a guardian. He did not say anything and only comforted her not to let her imagination run wild. But she knew that every time Colin saw Barit, he could not hide the envy in his eyes. Originally, he could also be a guardian who worked for the messenger of the beast deity. But because of her selfishness, it had turned into this situation today. She felt guilty towards Gu Mingming and also towards Colin. Now, Sandy did not even have the courage to hold Gu Mingming's little hand when she stood in front of her. You two changed your routine? Gazing at the wind with deep feelings? Leah swayed his large tail and leaned into Gu Mingming's arms. He looked at Sandy nonchalantly and teased, or could it be, you have fallen out of favor? Like I said, how can your little stubby tail compete with me? Our Ming Ming still favors us, don't you think so, Elvis? Elvis was not as good at concealing his emotions as Leah was. He only cleared his throat and did not say a word. Oriton followed Leah out and left without saying goodbye to anyone. When Barit came out, he saw Sandy and asked, "Where's Colin? He didn't come with you?" Sandy whispered, "Send me there, then he'll go back." Barit understood that Colin was too ashamed to see Gu Mingming. Oriton went hunting. He said he wanted to share dinner with us tonight. Oakley and I will go find some yellow gravy and roast the meat tonight, all right? Barit asked Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming understood that everyone was trying to coax her, but she just could not bring herself to smile. There was no other problem. He raised his head and looked at everyone's expectant gaze. Not wanting to spoil the mood, Gu Mingming nodded. All right. Chapter 6:12. As a human, the biggest problem with a mature mentality is that many things can be seen clearly at a glance. Elvis and Lee's accommodating attitude, Oriton and Barit's silent companionship, Oakley's hesitation and Sandy's expectant yet uneasy gaze. Gu Mingming could not breathe from the intense concern, but she did not want to let down these people who were concerned about her. Gu Mingming smiled and nodded at Sandy saying, "Come earlier tonight, let's have a gathering." Sandy then smiled and nodded heavily. The moment she turned around, Gu Mingming saw tears welling up in her eyes. After Sandy left, Barit and Oakley also set off to look for a beehive nearby. Gu Mingming leaned against Lee's chest tiredly, her gaze landing on Elvis's face, looking straight at his worried gaze. She wanted to smile, but the corners of her mouth were too heavy, so she could only give up in the end. Then she said calmly, "I just can't get used to these 1,000 years of memories, nothing else. You guys don't have to worry so much." Elvis walked in front of Gu Mingming, held her hand and pulled her into his arms. He hugged her tightly, wishing he could squeeze all his warmth into her body, then use his own body to replace her in enduring those 1,000 years of boring and dry memories. But even if he was the first partner, there were still some things he could not do. No matter how strong you are still my weakness. Not worrying about you might be something I will never learn in this lifetime. Gu Mingming hugged Elvis back, gently pressing her face against his chest. She lowered her eyes and said slowly, "I'm sorry." Leah also stood up from the stairs, presenting his handsome and flawless face, kissing Gu Mingming who was in Elvis's arms. His gentle smile seemed to condense the mysteries in the deepest part of the ocean, as if he was trying to drown her. His voice was slightly hoarse, but with a different kind of ambiguity. "You clearly know that compared to an apology we prefer to hear your confession." Gu Mingming bit her lower lip but could not say a word. Her feelings towards Elvis and Leah were undeniable. But she could not say the words "I like you" now. Leah did not force her, he just rubbed Gu Mingming's little head and said, "Today is the first time I'm attending a gathering with you as an official partner. If you don't smile, people will think that you were forced to mate with me." Gu Mingming looked at the half-genuine half-fake grievance in Lee's eyes and her gaze softened. "I am the messenger of the beast deity. Who can force me if I don't want to?" Leah walked to the other side of Elvis and placed his arm on Elvis's shoulder. He said with a sad look, "You said you liked me on the day of the warrior selection in Sauter, but you ended up crying so hard that you were about to stop breathing when you returned. That night, Oriton came to tease me. He said, 'How much does Gu Mingming dislike you? You cry like this just because I say I like you.'" Gu Mingming looked at Leah imitating Oriton's expressionless face and cold tone and felt that it was rather comical. She finally curled her lips and laughed softly. Seeing that Gu Mingming finally smiled, Leah put in more effort and continued, "After that, I fought with him and guess what happened?" Gu Mingming shook her head, indicating that she did not know. Leah raised his head proudly and said, "Although we are both third-level beasts, his brain is not as good as mine, so he naturally could not gain the upper hand." Aside from the topic. Chapter 613. Gu Mingming was just about to praise Leah when she heard Elvis say calmly, "I remember when you came back that day, your face was swollen and bruised. You didn't look like you took advantage of me at all." Gu Mingming was stunned for half a second before she raised her eyebrows and poked Elvis's chest lightly. Leah was indeed so anxious that he started messing around with Elvis. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming and didn't want to bother with him, so he just burrowed into Gu Mingming's arms and whimpered for Gu Mingming to make the decision for him. "Smile." Gu Mingming tried her best to smile. Exposing each other's secrets was one of the tacit understandings they had developed over the years, right? When she was upset, they cooperated and coaxed her. If she still didn't smile, these two fellows would definitely be more worried. "Mummy." Jiaoyu rushed out of the house and directly pounced into Gu Mingming's arms. Gu Mingming caught hold of her son, who was at the height of her thigh, and carried him up with one hand. She gently tidied his messy hair from running, and rubbed his pair of wolf ears lovingly. Out of the three sons who had evolved into half-orcs, Rigilu's evolution was the worst. Other than having a pair of wolf ears, he still had a tail that had not evolved. Gu Mingming guessed that it was because Jiaoyu was the most affected by her genes that his evolution was not smooth. This made Gu Mingming feel very apologetic towards Jiaoyu. If it was because of her genes that Jiaoyu failed to evolve and ended up being a half-orc, what would happen to his life? She didn't even dare to think about it. "What's wrong?" Gu Mingming tried to make her voice sound gentle. She didn't want her emotions to affect the children. Even though the children were so sensitive, she still hoped to minimize the impact. Jiaoyu's thoughtfulness was just like Gu Mingming's in the past. His deep amber eyes were like the warm sun when he smiled. His young face had the unique innocence of a child and he smiled innocently and warmly. "I eavesdropped on your conversation just now." Jiaoyu covered his little mouth and secretly told Gu Mingming this little secret. His eyes were filled with pride and some joy. Gu Mingming felt a little unreasonable and didn't understand what Jiaoyu meant. She just said softly, "It's not right to eavesdrop on others." Jiaoyu blinked his eyes and tilted his head to look at Gu Mingming. "Why not?" "Daddy Leah said that we should try our best to grasp all the details so that we can control the situation to the greatest extent and protect Mother." Gu Mingming turned to look at Leah. Leah cleared his throat and tried to clear his name. "But I didn't teach him to eavesdrop." Jiaoyu frowned and pouted his lips. He looked at Leah with a threatening gaze. Leah gave in and leaned forward, whispering, "Don't betray me, I will teach you the art of deduction." Jiaoyu then nodded in satisfaction, before smiling sweetly at Gu Mingming. "Yeah, Daddy Leah never taught me to eavesdrop on others." 3 black lines hung over Gu Mingming's head. Jiaoyu was now in her arms, and after integrating Snake's abilities, her hearing was extremely good. Shouldn't he keep this kind of under-the-table operation a secret from her? Wouldn't it be too fake if she pretended not to hear him when he was so close to her ear? Chapter 6:14. Gu Mingming watched as Jiaoyu used his two little hands, which could barely reach his ears, to press his ears against his head. His clear big eyes shone innocently like a deer's as he looked at her. She smiled warmly and held Jiaoyu's little hands in her own. So warm. Tell me, after eavesdropping, what happened? Jiaoyu looked as if he suddenly recalled something. His face lit up with excitement as he asked, I heard Mummy and mother-in-law say that they are going to roast meat tonight. Is it the kind with a bonfire? Many people chatting and eating together and listening to Mummy sing? Gu Mingming shook her head gently and said, No, it's just a few familiar friends eating together. Without a bonfire and many people, I will not go and sing. Jiaoyu hung his head low, his face full of disappointment. Oh, Gu Mingming used her finger to gently lift Jiaoyu's little face and asked, Why? You want a gathering with a bonfire, many people and singing? Jiaoyu pursed his lips and nodded, saying, I could have participated the previous time, it's all that strange snake's fault for abducting us halfway. I only saw mother singing and dancing from afar, and I was so groggy that I couldn't hear clearly. Gu Mingming's heart tightened as she looked at Jiaoyu's disappointed face that looked like he was about to cry. Sweeping her gaze across, she saw Huda, Kanwu and even the unconscious Qixin leaning against the door and peeking their little heads in. The other two little ones immediately shrank back when they saw Gu Mingming looking in their direction. After mumbling for a while, they lowered their heads and walked out to stand in front of Gu Mingming. When the four of us were trapped in the underground prison, we talked about Mummy singing and dancing that day the most, and the fragrant roast meat. We all agreed that the next time there is a gathering, we must stick close to Mummy and watch her singing and dancing from a close distance, and eat lots and lots of fragrant roast meat. Mummy, do you think Qixin will wake up if our wishes come true? He obviously wants to see Mom sing and dance the most. Huda carried the unconscious Qixin in his arms. The three of them were with Qixin every day and were like four conjoined babies wherever they went. The three brothers took turns to carry Qixin in their arms. Other than Gu Mingming, no one else could snatch Qixin away from them. Gu Mingming thought that perhaps this kidnapping incident had really traumatized her three sons. Looking at the three pairs of expectant little eyes, Gu Mingming did not have the courage to shake her head again. Taking a deep breath, Gu Mingming turned to Leah and said, Let's make the arrangements, the whole tribe will gather today and we will have a bonfire party at night. Leah smiled and asked, What's the title? Reputation. Asking the whole clan to hold a bonfire party, there had to be something to celebrate. If she directly said, My son wanted to see it so I made one, although it was the truth, it was still not very good. Gu Mingming gently stroked her ears and said, Celebrating the mating of the messenger of the beast deity and the snow fox tribe witch doctor, is this title enough? Leah was taken aback, his gaze gentle. He pulled Gu Mingming and Qixin into his arms and kissed Gu Mingming's lips, deep, lingering and unable to extricate himself. Chapter 6:15. That night, the bonfire lit up the night sky as the entire tribe celebrated. Elvis and Leah sat on either side of Gu Mingming, not even glancing at the rest of the people who came to celebrate. With the previous lesson, Barit and Oriton refused to leave Gu Mingming's side at all. The two steel-faced men just stood behind Elvis and Leah like bodyguards. Gu Mingming tried to persuade them a few times, but the two refused to loosen up. Helpless, Gu Mingming ignored them. The three young ones took turns carrying Qixin and running around the bonfire party. They kept sharing with Qixin how hot the fire was, how delicious the food was, how Mummy was going to sing soon. They kept sharing all the interesting news to Qixin, hoping to wake him up. But even though Qixin did not react at all, the three young ones were not discouraged at all. They carried Qixin and continued flying around. The snow foxes were in high spirits today, especially those females who had previously had conflicts with the females from Saint Nazaire. Their tails were raised to the sky. It was clearly written on their faces that, See, who is the female that the mighty messenger has his eyes on? Sandy only wanted to reconcile with Gu Mingming and did not care too much about it. It was just that Mandy and the other newly joined females had to suffer. They were originally the number one beauties of their respective tribes, but after just a few days in Saint Nazaire, they had to wander from place to place with the rest of the tribe. They had to go through migrations and battles, living their lives in fear. It was not easy for them to settle down temporarily, but they still had to fight with these foxes. Gu Mingming saw it all, but she could not bring herself to care. The affairs of the women were a mess. Once they stepped into it, they could forget about getting out of it. If they wanted to make a fuss, let them. Anyway, they would not be able to do anything. As long as it did not harm their foundation, Gu Mingming could not be bothered. Wabiai walked in front of Gu Mengmeng and looked at Elvis coldly, then at Leah. Then he kicked Elvis. Go to one side. Elvis frowned. The moment he looked up, his murderous aura had already leaked out. Wabiai gave a condescending smile. Elvis's muscles instantly swelled up. Gu Mengmeng's emotions had made him feel vexed for the past few days, but he did not dare to show it in front of Gu Mengmeng. A snake beast at the peak of the 5th level, right? It was a good time to have a good fight. Gu Mengmeng looked at the two of them in a flash and said softly, Are you two planning to tear Sauter apart? A battle between level 5 orcs was not the same as when Nina and her partner bullied Sandy in the past. It would be considered a big scene if a few of them fought until their scalps bled. If Wabiai and Elvis were to fight, there would be no need for the campfire party. They could just bring the construction team to a meeting and discuss the rebuilding of Sauter. Upon hearing Gu Mengmeng's voice, Elvis forced himself to calm down. Without saying a word, he stood up quietly and walked to the side. Wabiai looked at Leah and raised one eyebrow. Your first partner has already left. Aren't you going to be more sensible? Chapter 6:16. After Elvis and Leah left, Wabiai took out a fruit from his bosom. It was bright red and looked especially alluring. Gu Mengmeng's eyes welled up. She stared at the fruit for a long time but didn't reach for it. Wabiai just held the fruit and looked to the side. He wanted to pluck this for you the last time, but I plucked the wrong one. Gu Mengmeng remembered that day when Wabiai roared at Snake. If your female wants to eat it, why don't you pluck it yourself? In the end, he even tried to please Snake and was kicked onto a tree branch by Snake. Wabiai saw that Gu Mengmeng didn't reach for it after a long time and was rather impatient. He directly stuffed the fruit into Gu Mengmeng's hands and said, This time, you didn't pluck the wrong one. Is the one at the top and the best and biggest one? Hurry and eat it. Gu Mengmeng held up the fruit and bit into it in a daze. The juice spread to every one of her taste buds. It was obviously very sweet, but Gu Mengmeng felt like she was chewing wax. She frowned but tried her best to smile. Yeah, he has always had good taste. Tastes really good. Wabiai turned his head again and didn't look at Gu Mengmeng. He just said coldly, I will be heading back to the Snake King Valley in a while. I will guard the place he used to stay. Gu Mengmeng nodded. Yeah. Wabiai took a deep breath and continued. Gu Mengmeng, you guard it. Gu Mengmeng looked up at Wabiai. Guard what? Wabiai kept his head turned and refused to look at Gu Mengmeng. Guard yourself. Don't get hurt, don't get sick, don't get sad, and definitely don't die. Gu Mengmeng was stunned. She didn't understand what Wabiai meant. Wabiai said, He once roamed the entire beast world and finally stayed at the Snake King Valley. I think that is the place he likes. Gu Mengmeng searched through Snake's memories but couldn't figure out how he liked the Snake King Valley. She only knew that he was used to that place and had not come out for 1,000 years. But if he didn't like it, how could he get used to it? With that thought, Gu Mengmeng nodded and agreed with Wabiai's words. But Wabiai's expression dimmed. But in order to guard you, he abandoned the entire Snake King Valley without hesitation. So, the one he likes the most, is you. Gu Mengmeng's hand trembled as she held onto the fruit. She took a bite and pretended that she was busy so she did not answer Wabiai. Wabiai did not seem to be anticipating Gu Mengmeng's reply as he continued, I will protect the Snake King Valley that he abandoned. You wanted to protect Gu Mengmeng? You will protect her for him. If you dare to hurt yourself in the slightest, I will definitely not let you off. With that, Wabiai ignored Gu Mengmeng's reaction and directly stood up to leave without looking back. It wasn't that he didn't want to turn around, but he was afraid that when he turned around, he would discover that the familiar pressure didn't come from someone he was familiar with. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to control himself. After Wabiai left, Elvis and Leah returned to sit by Gu Mengmeng's side. They each hugged Gu Mengmeng but did not know what to say to comfort her. Just as the atmosphere was thick, a snow fox ran over and bowed respectfully in front of Gu Mengmeng. Then he said, Great messenger, there's a male outside the tribe who wishes to see you. Should we let him in? Gu Mengmeng looked up and asked, What male? Chapter 6:17. Gu Mengmeng did not have much of a reaction because from the reactions of Elvis and Leah after she told Sandy about this story, there were probably quite a number of people in this world who believed in Wuxia. Now that her reputation as the messenger of the beast deity was growing by the day, it was not a new plot for someone to impersonate her old lover. If it was in the past, Gu Mengmeng would have laughed like a pig, or even choked on her own saliva. But now she just said calmly, Chase him away, I don't want to see him. He was just a swindler. What was there to see? But in Elvis and Lee's eyes, her blandness had changed. Leah pursed his lips and exchanged glances with Elvis. In just a breath's time, they had already gone through 800 rounds of battle in their eyes. On one hand, this Yu Jin had memories with Gu Mingming that both of them did not have. Even Lee's, "I prefer to hear you confess to me rather than apologize," was derived from this male. In Gu Mingming's words, that was her first love. With the return of this male, Elvis and Lee's position would be in jeopardy. On the other hand, Gu Mingming did not even want to see him, which meant that she was still angry. If he didn't mind it anymore, why would he still be angry? Gu Mingming had been in low spirits during this period of time. The two of them had tried everything they could but could not share her worries. Perhaps Yu Jin could? In the end, the two of them reached an agreement. Gu Mingming was the most important. As long as it could make her feel better, no matter how painful it was, they could endure it. So, Leah waved his tail and laid on Gu Mingming's knee. He looked at Gu Mingming with his handsome face and asked, "Why not? Didn't you say, those who pass through the door are guests?" Gu Mingming did not see Elvis and Leah exchanging glances above her head just now, so she did not know that the holes in their brains had already reached the ends of the earth. Thus she just said calmly, "He's just a liar, what's there to see?" Liar? Didn't Yu Jin lie to her back then? If not, why would she be picked up by Elvis alone in the lake? Biting his lower lip, Leah held back his jealousy and said, "He lied to my Mingming's people, how can we let him off so easily? I want to meet him." Gu Mingming looked at Leah in confusion and did not say a word. Elvis held onto Gu Mingming's shoulders and pulled her into his embrace. He kissed her hair and said, "We know what to do, don't worry. Why should I be at ease?" Gu Mingming could not understand. Elvis said, "Bring him in." Gu Mingming looked at the jealousy in their eyes. She did not understand at first, but now she understood. Forget it, let them be. His emotions must have put a lot of pressure on the two of them recently. It was good to have someone come to their door to relieve their anger. So Gu Mingming nodded and the snow fox who delivered the letter turned and ran off, probably to bring the person in. Gu Mingming, who was originally lacking in interest, could not help but be curious. What would the first person to impersonate Yu Jin look like? Chapter 6:18. Gu Mingming did not know that ever since she inherited Snake's ability, her entire temperament had undergone a huge change. She clearly had a Lolita face, but her entire body was emitting a gloomy aura. She leaned lazily against Elvis's chest, smiling faintly at the males who were approaching her step by step. She did not appear to be perfunctory, but exuded a king's disdain that enveloped everyone. That was Snake's innate temperament, which could not be learned. Gu Mingming, as the heir, could at most unleash 80% of it, but it was enough to shock the world. Her gaze was filled with judgment and disdain, as if she was the king of hell, looking coldly at stupid humans. But that round and plump little face gave people a sense of confusion. The most innocent face had the most terrifying gaze. This contrast made people feel an indescribable strangeness, but also an indescribable harmony. Yu Jin had obvious wounds on his body. The most fatal one was an open wound on his chest that stretched from his right shoulder to his left lower abdomen. His flesh was exposed, and although the blood had stopped flowing, it still looked extremely hideous. There were countless other small wounds of different lengths, some were so deep that the bone could be seen. It was as if a large piece of flesh had been bitten off on his leg. Every step he took was painful but tough, and he had imitated the temperament of an iron-blooded Special Forces soldier very well. Gu Mingming's expression did not change at all, but Elvis and Leah looked at each other. They looked at Gu Mingming carefully, probably calculating. With such injuries, would Gu Mingming's heart ache? Then should they teach him a lesson now, or should they immediately bring him to be treated? That person stood beside the bonfire, as if he was not afraid of the blazing flames. But Gu Mingming could not only see the surface of a person, she could even easily see through a person's emotions, especially fear. Perhaps it was because the people who had appeared in front of Snake in the past 1,000 years had vividly portrayed all the types of fear in the world. So as long as you were afraid, Gu Mingming could see through any minute details at a glance. Fear of fire. That was normal. Before she appeared, the beast world had not seen fire for hundreds of years. Even the people from Saint Nazaire and Solder took half a year to get used to the flames. This Yu Jin was pretty good. To be able to show off to this extent, and to show that he wasn't afraid, he even purposely stood by the fire. He had some guts. "Ayun, I'm sorry I'm late." Yu Jin stared at Gu Mingming affectionately, not avoiding her cold gaze and sizing her up. Leah tightened his grip, feeling as if his heart was being clutched. "Ayun?" So Kang Moyan was her real name? Gu Mingming was a fake name? Gu Mingming smiled helplessly as she felt the tension radiating from her hands and shoulders. Just how insecure were these two fellows? They had already become partners, so why would they be swayed by the words of a liar? Gu Mingming returned Li's hand without batting an eyelid. She inched her head closer to Elvis's chest, using the smallest physical action to appease her two males. Then she opened her mouth and said only two words, "Purpose?" Jin was stunned, a hint of panic flashed across his face. Although it was only for a moment, it did not escape Elvis's and Li's guarded gaze that was staring at him. Chapter 619. Gu Mingming retracted her hand from Li's and slowly closed her eyes. She mumbled one word as if she was sleep-talking and did not say another word. Leah understood that she was handing this liar over to him to deal with. So he swayed his tail, stood up and walked down. He circled around Jin twice before asking, "Wolf beast?" Jin nodded. Leah placed a hand on his shoulder and patted him twice before asking again, "Third level?" Jin nodded again. Leah shrugged his shoulders and swayed his tail as he walked back. He still said one word, "Liar." Jin was taken aback. He took a step forward and said, "I did not lie, I am Jin." Leah glanced sideways at him and said, Jin is indeed third level, but Gu Mingming said that he is from the White Tiger Troop. Do you know what a white tiger looks like? Oriton, come over and let him see what a white tiger looks like. With that, Oriton, who had been guarding behind Gu Mingming, took a few steps forward and stood beside Leah, looking at Jin face to face. When two people of similar height stood together, the aura of Jin was instantly suppressed by Oriton. Oriton was one of the best among the third-level beasts. Other than Elvis, he had never submitted to anyone else. Although there was a fifth-level Elvis and a Beast King-level Gu Mingming sitting in the hall, other than these two strange creatures in the entire beast world, the peak of third level was already a very powerful existence. After all, most orcs did not have the chance to mate, so third level was a huge hurdle. And there were many orcs who could not even step into the third level realm in their entire lives. So, not to mention a mere imposter even if it was Leah. Oriton was not afraid. He swayed his neck left and right as a warm-up. This small action was learned by him subconsciously imitating Elvis. It gradually became a habit and could not be changed. I am here to look for Yen, not to fight. Jin had long heard of Oriton's reputation. Looking at that pair of fierce eyes, he felt really pressured. Oriton was expressionless as he said coldly, "If you can't even beat me, what right do you have to speak to the great messenger?" As soon as he finished speaking, Oriton roared and charged towards Jin. Phrases such as the opponent being injured and having an unfair advantage were worthless in the beast world. Who is to blame if you're injured? If you can't even protect yourself, it's because you're incompetent. Who should accommodate you because you're useless? Sorry, there was no such logic in the beast world. Jin was a level 3 orc after all. Even though his condition was not as good as Oriton's, it was not to the extent of Oriton's one-sided abuse. He dodged and could occasionally strike back at Oriton. After fighting for a while, there was only a small scratch on Oriton's arm, but Jin was in such a sorry state that it was almost unbearable to look at. Leah stared at Gu Mingming's expression from beginning to end and could not find any trace of heartache, so he was even more certain that she was a liar. But this liar came at the right time, he could relieve everyone's frustrations. So Leah stood up slowly and said softly, "It's alright, no matter if you're real or fake, as long as you can walk in front of Gu Mingming, I'll admit that you're Jin." Chapter 620. Elvis also slowly stood up from Gu Mingming's side. He took 2 steps forward and stood half a step behind Leah. He staggered his upper body and completely blocked Jin from Gu Mingming's line of sight. Ian flew out of nowhere and circled twice in the air. Then he spread his wings and flew in midair like a half-orc, looking down at Jin from above. It was not an exaggeration to say that Jin felt that there was an impassable iron wall in front of him. It was a high wall that gave off a strong sense of oppression and made it difficult for one to breathe. Walk over? Stop joking. He had no doubt that when he walked past these people and reached Gu Mingming, not even his bones would be left. Every cell in his body was afraid. Jin could not help but take a step back and said, I'll go. I'll go, alright? Oakley stood behind Jin, leading a group of tribesmen as the acting witch doctor. Among them, there was also the Snow Fox Elder who was at odds with him previously. They lined up in a row and behind them was a majestic group of beasts. In the dark night, pairs of bloodthirsty and dangerous eyes reflected sparks of fire, giving off an intimidating aura. Oakley laughed softly and asked, "Where do you think this is? That you can come and go as you please?" The Snow Fox Elder had an unfriendly expression and a pair of wise eyes shone with coldness. He looked at Yu Jin and said, "You have already offended the mighty beast deity by pretending to be the messenger and disrupting the celebration party of the messenger and the ninth highness of the Snow Fox tribe. As the elders of the messenger tribe, we cannot let you leave so easily." Yu Jin was really panicking. He originally thought that his looks matched Gu Mingming's description of Yu Jin, so he came with the mentality of giving it a try. He thought that since he matched Gu Mingming's description in every aspect, maybe she would like him when she sees him? Males, as long as they were pleasing to the eye, they could just accept them. As for whether he was the real Yu Jin, who would care? He did not want to make things so big. Yu Jin was extremely flustered. There was a wall in front, a pack of wolves behind and a huge bird flying above his head. There's no escape. What followed was a live broadcast of a group fight. Yes, a group fight. A group of people beating up Yu Jin. Elvis and the rest did not have a chance to attack as Oriton and Barit returned to Gu Mingming's side. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming back into his arms while Leah laid on Gu Mingming's knees, wagging his tail in boredom. Ian circled around twice before disappearing into the darkness again. A group of people around the bonfire were violently kicking Yu Jin. "All right." After a long while, Gu Mingming said softly, saving Yu Jin's life. Leah looked up with a puzzled expression. With a slightly sour tone he asked, "Your heart aches?" Gu Mingming did not answer Lee's question. She just sat at her original spot and looked disdainfully at Yu Jin, who was beaten to the point that he was on his last breath. She asked, "Tell me who sent you here?" Yu Jin was twitching as he laid on the ground. When he came, he got a body full of injuries in order to portray his character. This time he did not need to portray his injuries anymore as they were more realistic than before. Hearing Gu Mingming's question, he shook his head blankly and said, "No, no one sent me." Chapter 621. Yu Jin was stunned, shook his head and said, No, it was a crippled beast who taught me." "Crippled beast? Ko." The smile on Gu Mingming's face turned colder and her gaze was filled with venom. Her voice was calm and cold and it was hard to tell if she was happy or angry. She just asked, "Where is he?" Yu Jin was stunned, then he shook his head and said, "I don't know. He just happened to pass by our tribe and met me. Then he told me that I looked especially like an old lover of the great messenger. Then he told me that if I used the name Yu Jin to see you, you would definitely like me. That way I could become the male of the great messenger. Even if you don't like me, you'll still let me stay in the messenger's tribe on account of my resemblance to that person. Our tribe was too weak in the past and all the capable males had gone to better tribes to develop, leaving behind only the old and weak. Every year when winter comes, there would be waves and waves of stray beasts coming to snatch our food. If we don't leave now, we will all be forced to death." Gu Mingming quietly looked at the male who was beaten until his face was swollen and could not even stand up. She slowly spoke for him, "So you escaped and want to seek refuge with me?" Yu Jin firmly nodded his head and replied, "Yes." Gu Mingming chuckled and asked him back, "Why do you think I will accept a deserter who abandoned his tribe?" Yu Jin was startled for a moment, then shook his head and said, "I am not a deserter." Gu Mingming leaned back, her two thick tails pressing against her waist like a luxurious sofa backrest, allowing her to borrow strength to sit more comfortably. Gu Mingming looked at Yu Jin nonchalantly. "Oh?" He coughed. Yu Jin was a little emotional as he said, "I came to seek refuge with the great messenger so that Saint Nazir can accept my people." Gu Mingming gave a teasing smile and said, "Honey trap." Yu Jin stood rooted to the ground, not knowing how to respond. What honey trap he did not understand at all. Gu Mingming leaned forward with her elbows on her knees and the back of her hands supporting her chin. She sized up Yu Jin, who did not have an inch of good flesh on his body, and asked with a smile, "As long as I am willing to accept your people into Saint Nazir and become my beast pet, are you willing too?" The male nodded without hesitation and said, "Beast pet, guardian beast or even food, I am willing." But Leah burst out laughing. He glanced sideways at Yu Jin and said, "Even if you are willing, you have to see if our Meng is willing. You have to be at least as good as me to be a beast pet. Look at your battered appearance. Who would like it?" Gu Mingming sat at the same spot and did not comment on Li's words. She just said, "You said it yourself, the tribe is only left with the old, weak and sick. They will only be a burden if they join Saint Nazir. Why should I find trouble for my own tribe?" "You and I," Essen said, "Eugene, if not everyone please, you, Eugene, although they are only half-orcs, but—" Gu Mingming stood up and made a gesture. The 16 valued females from the previous beauty pageant, as well as Sauter's original female snow foxes, all walked in front of Gu Mingming in unison. It was really a riot of colors. The most important thing was, they were all perfect females. Gu Mingming stood in the middle of a large group of females. Even though they were of the same gender, it gave people the illusion that Gu Mingming was overbearing and aggressive, lying in the midst of flowers. Using 4 words to sum it up perfectly: invincible East. Aside. Chapter 622. The light in Yusi-jin's eyes completely dimmed. The most ideal situation would be for him to become Gu Mingming's male and receive her love, so that he could take care of his tribesmen. The next best thing would be for Gu Mingming to keep 2 half-orc females, so that even if the males could not survive the winter, they could die with no regrets. But now, his face was swollen and bruised, and looking at the males standing beside the messenger, was this how it felt to feel inferior? As for females, if it was any other tribe, even a half-orc female would definitely be accepted. But the messenger's tribe did not seem to lack females at all. Gu Mingming passed through the crowd and walked step by step to Yusi-jin. She squatted down and said in a calm voice without any emotions, "Your bargaining chip is not worth mentioning in my eyes. If you want to discuss terms with me, at least show some sincerity." Yusi-jin did not understand and just stared blankly at Gu Mingming. He did not know why, but he just felt that Gu Mingming was giving him a chance. After thinking for a while, he said, "As long as the mighty messenger is willing to accept my tribesmen, I can do anything you want me to." "Anything?" Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "Tell me the situation you saw that person from start to end, don't leave out a single word." Yusi-jin frowned and thought carefully before starting to narrate. "More than 10 days ago, there were stray beasts attacking our tribe. It was him who suddenly appeared and helped us defeat the stray beasts. We begged him to stay in our tribe. Although he was a crippled beast, he was still a 5th-level orc. With him, we would not have to be afraid of stray beasts attacking our tribe again. But he looked very sad and just looked into the distance, saying calmly, 'If I stay, it will be the real danger.' Then he suddenly looked at me and did not speak. After staring for a long time until I got goosebumps, he then opened his mouth and said that I looked like the messenger's old love. If I wanted to save the tribe, I could only rely on Saint Nazir. Then I came. Thinking about it, he was really rash. With just a few words from a person whose name he didn't even know, he actually brought his clansmen to this place after a long journey." Gu Mingming laughed coldly. Stray beasts attacked the tribe and he just so happened to appear and save the tribe? Cole did not look like a fox with a Lei Feng personality. Moreover, his mating mark had already been washed away by Gu Mingming. He was a stray beast himself. Why would he help the tribe fight against the stray beasts? Could it be that he had directed and acted on his own from start to finish? Gu Mingming smiled sinisterly, but she did not tell Yusi-jin her inner thoughts. She just said coldly, "Didn't he say anything else?" Yusi-jin frowned, thought carefully for a long time and said, "Oh, there is. He had even said something very strange, such as, 'If a counterfeit that is closer to the original appears, how long will you be favored?' That was the case. I didn't know what he was talking about. When I asked him again, he just smiled and said, 'I'm just talking to myself.' So I didn't take it to heart." Counterfeit? Gu Mingming turned back and saw that Leah was indeed unable to hold back his smile. He even knew about Lee's habit of imitating Yusi-jin to please him, and he even spent so much effort to find an imitation that looked more like Yusi-jin, just to suppress Leah. Chapter 623. Yusi-jin could not keep up with Gu Mingming's pace and just laid on the ground, looking up at Gu Mingming as she walked back to Elvis and Lee's side step by step. She sat down and returned to her original embrace, one black and one white tail swaying lightly on her left and right. The snow fox laid on her knees, looking enchanting and affectionate. The group of females laughed and laughed as they dispersed. The people behind them who were originally aggressive also retracted their murderous aura and scattered in all directions. It was as if the tension from before had never happened. After being stunned for a long time, he finally regained his senses. He and his clansmen could really stay in Saint Nazir. He could really become a member of the messenger's tribe. Struggling to stand up, Wuxia took a step forward and was stopped by Oriton. He did not say anything and only looked at Wuxia expressionlessly. They were both level 3 orcs, but Wuxia knew very well that he was no match for Oriton. Moreover, he had no intention of causing trouble, he only wanted to express his gratitude. So he shouted at Gu Mingming, "Burke." Gu Mingming looked at him from the corner of her eyes, not saying a word. Wuxia shouted again, "My name is Burke. From today onwards, my life belongs to Lord Emissary, and I'm at your disposal." Gu Mingming looked away and ignored him. She didn't need anyone else to put their lives in her hands. She no longer had the strength to bear another millennium. As she retracted her gaze, she saw Oriton handing Burke over to one of the elders and officially conveyed Gu Mingming's orders as the guardian of the messengers to temporarily settle the Burke tribesmen in Sauter and bring them along when Gu Mingming returned to St. Nazir. Leah slowly straightened his body and wiped away the playful expression on his face. He looked at Gu Mingming and asked, "You clearly know who instigated him to come and you still accepted him?" Gu Mingming chuckled. "The beast deity told me to maintain a kind heart. He said that this is the only way for me to find a way to save Hutta." Leah remained silent. Hutta's matter was a thorn in Gu Mingming's heart. As long as that little wolf cub did not wake up, Gu Mingming would be forced to take on all of Cole's tricks. He sighed and said, "I'll send someone to keep an eye on him." Gu Mingming chuckled. "Afraid that he will be another Ellie?" Leah nodded in acknowledgement. But Gu Mingming shook her head and said, "There's no need. A person who is willing to sacrifice himself for the tribe will not place his own tribe in a dangerous situation just for Cole's goal." Elvis's voice was slightly cold. "You believe him?" Gu Mingming nodded. She did not know if it was because of Snake, but she could now easily discern the subtle emotions of others, especially lies and fear. Elvis sighed and said, "Because he really looks like Wuxia, isn't that right?" Gu Mingming chuckled. She glanced sideways at Elvis and then at Leah. "Do the two of you still think that Wuxia really exists?" Elvis remained silent and Leah nodded. Gu Mingming was helpless, but she could not be bothered to explain further. She just said, "Pass down the order. In the future, if anyone claims to be Wuxia, there's no need to ask for permission. Just beat him away." Elvis frowned and his gaze darkened. "I actually hope that he really finds his way here. I will fulfill my promise and stay by your side." Gu Mingming was a little surprised and looked at Elvis in confusion. Chapter 624. Gu Mingming's heart clenched. Had her emotions reached such a stage that Elvis and Leah could not do anything about it? Actually, it was really nothing much. She just did not have much interest in anything and was not too upset even if she could not be happy. Snake's matter. She had already gotten over it, or perhaps it was the feelings Snake had felt when he saved her that combined with her guilt. With the beast deities and Wabiai's guidance and reminders, she was no longer that upset. She was just not happy or angry, but it seemed to have made those two fellows very worried. The corners of Gu Mingming's mouth twitched as she forced a smile. She looked at Elvis and said, "I am really fine. I will slowly get better after a few days of getting used to this 1,000-year soul. Don't worry, all right?" Elvis sighed softly, then hugged Gu Mingming even tighter. His faint and hoarse voice rang above Gu Mingming's head. "I'm afraid the only thing I can't learn in this lifetime is not to worry about you." Gu Mingming did not say anything else and just quietly allowed Elvis to hug her. The three little ones were drenched in sweat from running and suddenly pounced into Gu Mingming's arms. Although Gu Mingming would not be pushed down by them now, Leah and Elvis still instinctively tried to stop them. But these three little ones were too agile. They made use of their bodies to make use of the time difference and directly bypassed Elvis and Leah from 3 different angles. They ran to Gu Mingming's side with their buttocks wobbling. "Mummy, when are you going to sing?" Jiaoyu carried Qixin in his arms as he looked up at Gu Mingming and asked. Hutta lay at Gu Mingming's feet, his big bright eyes filled with anticipation. But he pursed his lips and did not say anything. Kanwu occupied the most advantageous position and hung his whole body in Gu Mingming's arms. He looked up at Gu Mingming and followed Jiaoyu's words. Yes, Mummy, when are you going to sing?" Gu Mingming rubbed Kanwu's little head and kissed Hutta and Jiaoyu. Finally, she carried Qixin in her arms and said, "Let's go and sing now." The 3 children's eyes lit up. Kanwu gave Gu Mingming's embrace to Qixin and followed closely behind her. He asked, "Mummy, can we follow you?" Gu Mingming smiled and nodded. "Of course, I'll give you VIP seats." "Jiaoyu, what is a VIP seat?" Gu Mingming brought the 4 children and walked towards the bonfire saying, "Very important, people. It means a very important person. Kanwu sniggered and turned back to glance at Elvis, clearly provoking him. He went forward and hugged Gu Mingming's shoulders. At the same time he accidentally kicked Kanwu to the side. He only looked at Gu Mingming's side profile and asked, "Are Leah and I VIPs too?" Gu Mingming's face turned red. In the past, Gu Mingming could not notice Elvis and Kanwu's little tricks, but now she could see it very clearly. Chuckling lightly he said, "The VIP seats are limited. If you want to sit, carry Kanwu. The two of you can count as one seat." Elvis frowned and lowered his head to look at Kanwu. Both father and son had a tacit understanding and spoke at the same time. "No. No." Gu Mingming chuckled. "Oh, you really have telepathy." Chapter 625. Kanwu jumped into Li's arms and said, "I will sit with Daddy Leah." Gu Mingming shook her head. Kanwu was clearly the most like Elvis, but Elvis just had the worst relationship with him. Huda pursed his lips. He also wanted someone to carry him, but why was there no place for him? Gu Mingming lowered her head and hugged Qixin with one arm. She opened her other arm and looked at Huda, saying, "Come, let Mummy carry you." Huda looked up and smiled. He shook his head and said, "I am the elder brother, I can walk by myself." He was satisfied that he was not neglected. Mummy was already having a hard time, he could not be her burden. Gu Mingming rubbed Huda's little head and bent down to carry him up. She kissed his little face and said, "You are the elder brother of the three of them, but also my son." The moment she finished speaking, Gu Mingming's arms felt lighter. Elvis took over Huda and Qixin was carried by Leah. Leah had always been on good terms with the children, so it was not strange that he would carry them. But Elvis, who had never carried anyone other than Jiaoyu, was now willing to carry Huda in his arms. This made Gu Mingming rather surprised. Elvis cleared his throat and said, "Your males are still alive, there is no reason for you to suffer." Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "It's just carrying two sons, they are not that heavy." Elvis stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Gu Mingming. His blue eyes were filled with seriousness as he said word by word, "No matter how heavy it is, I should be the one to carry it." Gu Mingming did not argue any further because she knew that Elvis and Leah were already panicking enough. They desperately wanted to do something for her to make her feel better. And all she could do was to cooperate. Nodding, Gu Mingming had already walked to the side of the bonfire. The drum used for Colin's proposal was left in St. Nazaire, but Leah rushed to make a new one after knowing that Gu Mingming was going to hold a bonfire party and had promised the children to sing. It was basically the same as the first version, but there were some improvements on the details, making it look much more exquisite than the one in St. Nazaire. Gu Mingming held the drumstick and hammered on the drum, producing a deep and resonant sound. With that hammering, only the crackling sound of the burning wood could be heard in the entire square. Everyone looked at Gu Mingming in unison. Gu Mingming took a deep breath and flipped onto the drum. She sat sideways lazily with one foot on the edge of the drum and the other hanging down casually. She held the drumstick in her hands and hit the drum rhythmically, each beat more concentrated than the one before. After the last beat, Gu Mingming slowly opened her mouth to sing Aliens. As only a few races in the beast world knew how to sing, this song Alien had become Gu Mingming's masterpiece. Every time the tribesmen heard it, their blood would boil. Following Colin's roar, the scene was so heated that it almost went out of control. Gu Mingming instinctively turned to look at Qixin. He was still sleeping quietly. Smiling bitterly, Gu Mingming looked down in disappointment. She also knew that Qixin was poisoned by coal. How could one song wake him up? She had only agreed to Huda's request because she could tell that the children were thinking of ways to make her happy. She could not bear to reject the children's kind intentions, but in the end she was still delusional. What if Qixin could really wake up from a song? That would be the greatest mercy from the heavens. Chapter 626. The night campfire party lasted for a long time. To be precise, it was a night of revelry for the Snow Fox tribe. After 1,000 years, the Snow Fox tribe finally became the closest tribe to the messenger of the beast deity. The worries that had been in turmoil for 1,000 years gradually disappeared along with the mark on Gu Mingming's left ear. In the following days, Leah became very busy. Gu Mingming intentionally handed solder over to Oakley to manage. After all, in the 1 month that Gu Mingming was in the Snake King Valley, Oakley managed the tribe well despite the estrangement between the two tribes. So Lee's main task for this period was to bring Oakley along to handle some tribe matters and teach him how to balance the relationship between power and benefits. After Leah and Gu Mengmeng became partners, the Snow Fox tribe became more peaceful. In Li's words, they made a ruckus previously because they were too uneasy and afraid that Gu Mengmeng would abandon them. So they desperately wanted to prove that they were stronger than the people of Saint Nazaire. This kind of situation was very common. It was the legendary saying that the more lacking something, the more they would flaunt it. But now that Leah and Gu Mengmeng's relationship had been confirmed, and Gu Mengmeng had told the elders that they were a family, the pride and nobility that had been ingrained into the Snow Fox tribe's bones for 1,000 years had gradually awakened, becoming the best framework to restrain them. There was no need to worry too much about restraining them, just a light sentence, "Don't forget you are from the Snow Fox tribe." It was easy for the elder and those troublesome females to settle down. The rain came suddenly. Gu Mengmeng had never seen such a majestic aura that could destroy everything in the modern world. Sitting at the entrance of the stone house, Gu Mengmeng reached out one hand to catch the rainwater falling from the sky. Gu Mengmeng frowned slightly as she watched the bean-sized raindrops land on her hand. It actually hurt a little from being smashed. If it was him, perhaps he would be happy? After all, he loved rainy days the most. A piece of beast skin was draped over her. Gu Mengmeng didn't turn back and just leaned into the familiar embrace. This rain will last for at least 10 days. The food reserves at home might not be enough, so I need to go out for a while. Elvis's gentle voice rang from above her head. There were quite a lot of people in this house now. Elvis and Li's appetites had always been huge, and they would usually come back after eating their fill while hunting. Accompanying Gu Mengmeng to eat was just to enjoy the feeling of eating with her. After Huda and his brothers evolved, their appetites had obviously increased. The three of them could eat almost an entire wild beast in one meal. After inheriting Snake's powers, Gu Mengmeng's appetite had obviously increased. A family would need about 5 wild beasts a day. The food reserves at home were indeed not enough. Gu Mengmeng stood up slowly and stuffed the beast's skin back into Elvis's arms. Then she looked at the rain and said, "I'll go. This kind of weather is more suitable for me than anyone else." Gu Mengmeng had just taken her first step, and before her heel could even touch the ground, the back of her hand was pulled back by someone and she fell back into Elvis's chest. Elvis draped the beast skin hood over Gu Mengmeng's body, then hugged her whole body in his arms. After staying silent for a while, he said, "My female should be pampered. As long as I'm alive, there won't be any weather suitable for you to travel around. Understand?" Chapter 627. Elvis frowned and said, "You can't get drenched in the rain, water will enter your brain." Gu Mengmeng was taken aback for a moment before she burst out laughing. She remembered that this was what she used to tease Elvis and Leah. That time when they were digging bamboo shoots in the bamboo forest, Ian was also present, and the three males even shook their heads with a straight face, saying things like, "I won't die anyway, it shouldn't be serious." He actually took it seriously and even remembered it till now. Elvis did not know what was so funny about this sentence, but it was the biggest smile Gu Mengmeng had seen ever since she returned from the Snake King Valley. It was rare to see her face so radiant, and Elvis felt as if spring had bloomed in his heart and the sun was shining brightly in her smile. Elvis's large hand cupped Gu Mengmeng's little face, and through the gaps between his fingers, her gaze was clear and calm. A faint smile was already extremely precious to Elvis, and he was suddenly so afraid of losing this smile. He even thought, so what if he got drenched in the rain as long as she was happy? Even if he had to drown in the rain with her, he was willing. For some strange reason, Elvis actually nodded and said, "Don't run around, you must always stay within my sight." Gu Mengmeng knew that Elvis had agreed. In the past, she would always act cute and throw a tantrum whenever she asked him to do something, but as long as it was something bad for her body, he would never back down. But now, just a smile was enough to make him compromise. She must have done something wrong in the end, otherwise why would he become more and more humble after mating for more than half a year and having 4 children? Gu Mengmeng wrapped her arms around Elvis's arm and leaned against his shoulder. She nodded and said, "All right, I will stick to you like this." Her heart felt as if it was being ruthlessly tugged at by something. Elvis lowered his head and kissed Gu Mengmeng's hair. He smiled and did not say a word, only using the beast skin to wrap her up more tightly. Then he carried her up and strode into the rain. The raindrops landed on the beast's skin, giving off a concentrated thud sound. The beast's skin had a certain waterproof function, and the raindrops slid down the fur on the beast's skin, not drenching Gu Mengmeng at all. Gu Mengmeng wrapped her little arms around Elvis's neck and stretched out an arm behind him to catch the raindrops falling from the sky. It still hurts as much as before, but this feeling doesn't seem too bad." Elvis quickly brought Gu Mengmeng into the heart of the forest. With a few leaps, he placed Gu Mengmeng in a relatively open area. He tidied up the beast's skin and reminded her, "Don't run around, understand?" Gu Mengmeng nodded and gave Elvis a reassuring smile. Elvis transformed into a wolf and charged into the depths of the misty rain. He wanted to end the battle quickly and not let Gu Mengmeng wait for too long. Gu Mengmeng sat in the rain, hugging her knees. She lifted her face slightly and squinted her eyes, allowing the rain to hit her face. Why do snakes like rainy days? The rain was clearly very painful when it hit the body. A person slowly approached Gu Mengmeng. The rain fell to the ground and rose up again. Mist filled the air, and even with Gu Mengmeng's eyesight, she could not see that person's face clearly. The smell was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember whose smell it was. Step by step, when Gu Mengmeng saw clearly the person carrying the prey, the emotions on her face had completely disappeared. "It's you?" Gu Mengmeng asked gently. Chapter 628. Gu Mengmeng sized up Burke, who was standing beside her and using his prey to shield her from the rain. "What are you doing?" Burke carried his prey on his shoulders. In order to shield Gu Mengmeng from the rain as much as possible, he stood against the wind. The rain hit him from behind, but he stood there resolutely without moving an inch. He replied, "I met Elvis on my way back. Are you waiting for him?" Gu Mengmeng looked at Burke. Gu Mengmeng did not reply. She just quietly lowered her head to look at the raindrops falling into the puddle beside her feet. Drop by drop, ripples spread out in circles, but it did not form a circle before it was smashed by another drop of rain. Burke didn't mind and continued. "I came out to hunt for the elders in the tribe. You said before, if we stay we must be self-sufficient and not be a burden to the tribe." Gu Mengmeng still didn't reply. After the incident with Snake, Gu Mengmeng clearly knew that if you don't want to give others a chance right from the start, then keep your kindness and easygoing. Don't give others hope and let them misunderstand. Burke acted as if he couldn't see Gu Mengmeng's rejection. "I, Burke, am a man of my words. You protected our entire tribe. My life is yours." Gu Mengmeng saw that Burke had no intention of stopping. She glanced at him and said coldly, "Your life has no value to me, so you can keep it for yourself. I don't want it. Also, you are disturbing me from watching the rain. So please leave and stop bothering me." Burke was stunned for 2 seconds. His expression froze. He then lowered his head and said, "I will accompany you until Elvis returns. After all, this is the wilderness. It's not safe for you to be alone." The rain was still pouring. The surroundings were misty and cold. But it made Gu Mengmeng feel very comfortable. Gu Mengmeng laughed softly. "Do you think, in the entire beast world, anyone can hurt me?" The beast pressure slowly seeping out made Burke's legs wobble. He frowned and clenched his teeth, unwilling to leave. Gu Mengmeng retracted her beast pressure and looked at him calmly. "I won't accept you. So don't bother trying to please me. There are many females in the tribe. Your chances of success will be higher if you change your target." Even though it was raining cats and dogs, Borg could clearly feel a layer of cold sweat forming on his body. The coldness in his bones was even colder than the rain. Gu Mengmeng did have the ability to protect herself, she did not need him. But Burke still shook his head resolutely. "I will stay with Elvis until he returns. Once he returns I will leave." Gu Mengmeng frowned and said, I said I don't need your company." Borg stubbornly insisted, "If you don't need company, then don't put on such a lonely expression. It's so heartbreaking." Burke's voice was not loud. If not for Gu Mengmeng's amazing hearing, she might not have heard him through the sound of the rain. After being stunned for a moment, Gu Mengmeng slowly stood up and said, "If you are not leaving, I will." Burke watched as Gu Mengmeng walked into the rain at a steady pace. He was in a daze until she completely disappeared in the rain. He then lowered his head slowly and murmured, "I just want to accompany you." Gu Mengmeng walked into the forest and accurately located Elvis's direction. Chapter 629. Seeing Gu Mengmeng, Elvis was momentarily stunned. Throwing the dead beast aside, he transformed into his human form and walked to Gu Mengmeng. His long black hair stuck to his body and his muscles were defined and defined. The faint smell of blood accentuated his elegance as he stood in the rain, as if he was a mandala flower blooming in hell. "Why are you here?" Elvis furrowed his brows and pulled up the beast's skin to cover her head, preventing the rainwater from entering her eyes. "I saw that you were not back for a long time and got a little anxious, so I came in." Gu Mengmeng looked at the pile of prey behind Elvis and asked, "It's too slow to kill them one by one, why don't you just release your aura and save so much trouble? Elvis smiled dotingly as he brushed away the raindrops on Gu Mingming's face and said, releasing your aura will scare the prey out of their guts and the meat will be bitter. How can we eat it then? Gu Mingming nodded, not really understanding. As a human, Gu Mingming did not have any hunting experience. As a snake beast, Snake basically swallowed whatever he wanted to eat and did not need to bring the prey back. Elvis carried all the prey onto his right shoulder and reached out his left arm to carry Gu Mingming up, saying, let's go back, it's very dangerous in the forest when it's raining. If there's thunder, it'll hurt you easily. Gu Mingming smiled and said, so you left me outside and came in alone? Elvis nodded and kissed Gu Mingming's little face lightly, saying, let's go back. Gu Mingming did not resist Elvis's kiss and just obediently placed her face on Elvis's chest, saying softly, put down the prey. Elvis did not understand but still did as he was told. Gu Mingming gave him a look and many little snakes slowly slithered out from behind the trees, then burrowed under the prey and carried them up. Elvis chuckled and said, that's good too, at least you won't get any blood stains on you. Gu Mingming did not say anything and just nodded in Elvis's arms, allowing him to carry her back. When they passed by the place where Gu Mingming was sitting, Burke had already left. When she returned to the stone house, Leah was sitting anxiously at the door looking into the rain. He heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Gu Mingming. Without another word, he took Gu Mingming from Elvis's arms and walked into the house. He removed her clothes and placed her into the stone bathtub filled with hot water. Thank you. Gu Mingming leaned against the edge of the bathtub, tilting her face as she fiddled with the hot water. Leah squatted outside the bathtub and also leaned against the edge of the bathtub. He looked at Gu Mingming face to face and asked, this rain will last for about 10 days. Are you feeling suffocated at home? How about I bring Sandy over and ask her to keep you company? Gu Mingming shook her head and said, she always acts like she did something wrong in front of me and is so timid. I think, seeing me, she's also very stressed. Forget it, I'm fine. Leah held Gu Mingming's little hand and said, how about I will push all the matters in the tribe to Oakley and focus on staying at home to accompany you, alright? Gu Mingming chuckled and asked, it's just accompanying Elvis to hunt, why are you so nervous? Chapter 630. Gu Mingming was taken aback. She chuckled and said, Burke was here just now? Leah nodded. When I came back, I realized that both you and Elvis were not around. I was afraid that something might have happened to you, so I went out to look for you. I met Borg, who had just returned from a hunt, and he said, Gu Mingming chuckled. You said I look very lonely sitting in the rain, as if I need someone to accompany me? Leah hesitated for a moment before nodding. Frowning slightly, his long and narrow eyes filled with heartache. His voice was as gentle as the moonlight. His slender fingers brushed past Gu Mingming's face and stopped at her left ear. My female needs someone to accompany her, and it's actually another male telling me. I must be a failure. Gu Mingming held Lee's hand gently and placed it on her face. With a gentle gaze, she said, I'm just accompanying Elvis to hunt and taking the chance to relax. I'm not alone and you're not ignoring me. I know that the reason why you've been teaching Oakley without eating or sleeping is so that you can accompany me back to St. Nazir as soon as possible. Don't worry, I'm fine. If I really need anything, I will tell you personally. I will not let you miss the time when I need you. As for Borg, he's just an outsider. Why should I care about what he says? Leah chuckled. That's true, he's not the real UC Gene. With that, Elvis carried a big bowl of ginger water into the house and knelt down on one knee beside Gu Mingming. He blew on the spoon until it warmed up before sending it to Gu Mingming's lips. Drink some to warm up your body. Gu Mingming did not reject him and allowed Elvis to feed her a big bowl. After showering and drinking the ginger water, Gu Mingming changed into a clean set of clothes and sat at the door, staring outside in a daze. Elvis and Leah were dealing with their prey at the back of the stone house. In the rain, someone ran towards Gu Mingming but stopped not too far away. He did not go any closer, nor did he leave. He just stood there and stared at Gu Mingming for a long time, before lowering his head and turning to leave. Gu Mingming recognized that person's aura. It was Burke. He should have come to see her, but since he didn't, it should be nothing important. Perhaps, he just wanted to make sure that she had returned safely. Gu Mingming did not greet Burke. She did not even look at him or give him any response. It was as if he was just a drop in the heavy rain, insignificant. The heavy rain continued for 13 days and Burke stared at Gu Mingming in the rain for 13 days. On the 14th day the weather was clear. Gu Mingming stretched her arms and finally walked under the sunlight. Reaching out his hand to block the bright sun, he squinted his eyes to adjust to the light that leaked through the gaps between his fingers. She felt the weight on her waist lightening as she landed in Elvis's chest. His warm voice sounded above her head, sounding sweet and melancholic. "Where do you want to go? I'll accompany you." Gu Mingming had not gone out for a long time, so she lazily leaned into Elvis's arms. "Let's go and see Leah. If things are more or less settled, I want to return to Saint Nazaire." "All right," Elvis answered softly. When Elvis carried Gu Mingming into the meeting room, Leah and Oakley were discussing whether to stay or leave. It was inevitable for Gu Mingming to return to Saint Nazaire. When they came out, the salt they brought was almost finished, so they had to return as soon as possible. But the problem now was who would follow Gu Mingming back to Saint Nazaire, and who would stay in Sauter to guard the branch. Out of topic, today's update had ended. It was almost March and Susu was working hard to save her chapters, preparing for the explosive update in March. My babies, please keep looking forward to it. Also, it was almost the end of the month. The monthly ticket would expire. Chapter 631. Ming Ming. Li's face was filled with fatigue, but his eyes still lit up when he saw Gu Mingming. There was a chair in the main seat of the meeting room which had the feel of the Hall of Justice. Other than Gu Mingming, no one else dared to sit on that chair. Even Leah had never sat on it before. Gu Mingming did not have much feelings towards such formality, but Elvis would always put her in that position every time she came over, so she got used to it after a while. Leah sat beside Gu Mingming's legs and laid on her knees to look up at her. His furry tail swayed gently and finally landed in Gu Mingming's arms. No matter how tired he was, he still smiled blissfully and asked, "It's rare for the weather to be clear. Why did you come to the meeting room instead of walking around?" Gu Mingming fiddled with Li's tail, which was getting firmer by the day, and looked at Oakley, who had not spoken to her properly ever since her identity as the messenger of the beast deity was verified. She said, "I came to see how busy you guys are and if there's anything you need my help with." Oakley lowered his head and stood at the side respectfully. He said, "I am discussing with Mighty Leah about the candidates to follow you back to Saint Nazaire. Mighty Messenger, please tell me if there are any of them you wish to bring along or leave behind." Gu Mingming looked at Oakley and did not speak for a long while. She pursed her lips and seemed to be in a trance. Back then he used a white fox to express his goodwill to her, followed her to gather honey without knowing anything, roasted meat with Barit and Colin outside Elvis's cave, and prepared rations before winter. It was as if it was just yesterday. Since when did that shy but clever Oakley become so distant and not dare to get close to her? Gu Mingming said, "In the past, we didn't talk like this." Oakley pursed his lips and lowered his head. "In the past, you were not the messenger of the beast deity." Gu Mingming sighed softly and did not say anything else. It was very difficult to maintain a basic friendship between males and females. That boundary was too difficult to grasp. Snake was the best example. Perhaps this was already the best outcome. Without further ado, Gu Mingming rubbed her temples and said, "The original tribesmen of Saint Nazaire can stay if they want. Those who don't, follow me back. Burke and the newly joined tribesmen must all follow me. As for the Snow Fox clan, except for Leah, everyone else will stay." Oakley frowned and thought for a moment before replying, "Other than Lord Leah, I'm afraid those few elders will be thinking too much." Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "Don't they like to worship the esoterica? I'll leave a set of secret manuals for them to worship, so they won't make trouble again." Oakley lifted his head and looked at Gu Mingming in confusion, not saying a word. Gu Mingming asked Oriton and Barit to bring back 2 large stone slabs. The size was comparable to the blackboards in school, and the surface had been polished to be extremely smooth. Then they dipped a branch into the ashes left over from the fire and wrote some words on the stone slab. Then Elvis, Leah, Oriton and Barit used their sharp claws to slowly carve the inscriptions on the stone slab along the traces left by the ashes. It would take 3 days for everything to be done. Leah stared at the stone tablet for a long time, then pointed at one of the tablets and asked, "Ming Ming, what's written on it? Can you tell me?" Chapter 632. 36 Stratagems? Leah looked at Gu Mingming in confusion. Gu Mingming nodded and said, "Do you remember? You told me before that half of the esoterica in the Snow Fox tribe can only be learned by the leaders, while the other half can only be learned by the witch doctor." Leah nodded to show that he remembered. Gu Mingming continued, "The deduction skills you know are not from our world. Damn, it was most likely taught by the beast deity to the previous messenger, who then taught it to the witch doctor, and then passed it down from generation to generation. However, the secret manuals memorized by the leaders are very likely products of our era. Leah looked at Gu Mingming, then at the stone tablet that was carved with unknown symbols and said, "This 36 stratagems is one of them?" Gu Mingming nodded and said, "I suspect that Cole knows how to memorize this 36 stratagems." Leah asked, "Did the beast deity tell you that?" Gu Mingming said, "No, I guessed it." Leah did not probe further and just looked at Gu Mingming quietly. Gu Mingming walked to the front of the second stone tablet and stroked a line of words, reading slowly, 34 stratagems, the trick of injuring oneself to gain the confidence of others. If one does not harm himself, the victim must be real. False is real, true is false. The luck of childlike innocence follow the sun. The 5 males in the house were all confused, and even Leah did not understand what Gu Mingming was saying. Gu Mingming chuckled and continued, "This is one stratagem in the 36 stratagems. I have read it before but actually did not remember it. But ever since I integrated Snake's ability, everything I have seen in the past has mysteriously become very clear. Feels like, something like a photographic memory." The moment Gu Mingming mentioned Snake, Elvis and Leah tensed up. They were especially afraid that she would sink into that negative calmness again. So Leah pulled Gu Mingming's little hand and asked with a serious face, "So what does it mean? What does it have to do with Cole?" Gu Mingming said, "Do you still remember when Cole tricked me into coming to Sauter, and in order to gain my trust, he injured himself all over to create the illusion that he was rescuing Qixin?" Leah nodded to show that he remembered. Gu Mingming said, "His injuries were so severe that he almost lost his life. It's not an exaggeration to say that his internal organs were all exposed in front of me. If you hadn't asked Dylan to contact me in advance, I would have believed that he was a good person even if I had my doubts. Now that I think about it, it was just a ruse to injure oneself to gain confidence." Leah pondered for a moment and said, "If people don't harm themselves, the victims must be real?" Gu Mingming nodded. "That's what I mean." Leah frowned. "Then when Burke came to seek refuge, he was covered in injuries. Was that also a ruse?" Gu Mingming shook her head. Burke did not purposely inflict those injuries. They must have been inflicted when the stray beasts attacked the tribe. Leah was silent for a moment before he said slowly, "Mingming, I still feel that Burke is not simple." Gu Mingming chuckled. "Cole would not go through so much trouble to send a useless person over. He must have a backup plan." "Leah, I think so too. Cole was a stray beast now, why would he be so kind as to help a foreign tribe chase away stray beasts? No matter how I look at it, it doesn't seem like his style. I would rather believe it if he was the one who organized the stray beasts to attack Burke's tribe." Chapter 633. Leah was stunned, as if he suddenly thought of something. He asked, "So Burke coming to seek refuge is also one of the plans?" Gu Mingming nodded and took another step forward. She touched a line of words and said, "The 7th stratagem, create something out of nothing." It was a lie, not a lie. It was all a lie. Xiaoyin Taiyin Taiyang. Leah did not really understand the explanation in this plan, but he was sure of one thing. Gu Mingming knew clearly that Burke's allegiance was not simple. Elvis took a step forward and stood beside Gu Mingming. He frowned and said, "Since there's something wrong with Burke, there's no need to bring him back to St. Nazaire. I'll go there later and settle it on the spot." Gu Mingming held onto Elvis's arm and shook her head lightly. She took 2 steps back and pointed at another line of words. With a cold gaze she said, "The 30th stratagem, reverse the situation. Take advantage of the gap to step in, choke the host, and gradually advance." Li's hand gently brushed past a line of words and finally met Gu Mingming's hand. With a light grip, he held her little hand in his palm. There was a hint of a smile in his long and narrow eyes. "Mingming is planning to use Burke to lure Cole out?" Gu Mingming nodded and said, "Although I still don't know why he inserted Burke, but there's no harm in countering his moves. If he wanted Borg to work for him, he would have to meet Borg on a regular basis and exchange information. So as long as we keep an eye on Burke, we can definitely wait for Cole." Leah held Gu Mingming's hand and tugged her gently towards him. Looking into her eyes, he said gently and lovingly, "I know you are anxious to save Qixin, but you have to promise me that you will not put yourself in danger, all right?" Gu Mingming chuckled. "How long more do you need to get used to the Beast King's powers in my body?" Leah shook his head, his gaze still focused on Gu Mingming's face. With a serious and cautious expression he said, "In terms of power, no one can match up to you. But back then when we were fighting Cole, neither Elvis nor I were his match. If Cole really knows how to use the things on the stone tablet, We have to be extra careful. Gu Mingming nodded, indicating that she understood. It was easy to dodge an open spear, but difficult to guard against a hidden arrow. She understood this principle. All right, let's first embed these 2 stone slabs into the wall, then cover them with animal skins. A half-arm deep groove had already been dug in the wall, and the large stone tablet was placed in it at a slight angle. Then it was pushed and stuck inside. Gu Mingming shook it lightly and realized that it was still very stable. She nodded her head in satisfaction, then took out 2 large pieces of beast skin and covered the notch. Only then did he invite the elders of the Snow Fox clan in. Ever since the bonfire party, the few elders had boasted of their virtue and prestige. After a period of time, they really did seem to have some sage-like demeanor. This subordinate greets Lord Envoy. The few old foxes bowed respectfully to Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming raised her hand and went straight to the point. These 2 days I will be bringing a portion of my tribesmen back to St. Nazir. As for Sauter, I will leave Oakley behind to manage the overall situation. I hope that the few elders can cooperate and support him. When these words came out, the elders were all stunned. Before they could even speak, their faces were already unable to maintain their composure. Chapter 634. Gu Mingming's emphasis on the word, trusted, indeed made the elders' eyes light up and the unwillingness on their faces visibly disappeared. Gu Mingming gave them a look and Oriton and Barit lifted up the beast's skin. The 36 stratagems, engraved on the stone tablet appeared in front of the few old foxes. The few elders' eyes widened. Although they did not recognize the words on it, they clearly knew that it was the symbol of the beast deity. Then they hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed 9 times towards the stone tablet. Gu Mingming suddenly thought of the days when she worked at the amusement park. Some of the older tourists also had the same habit. They would crazily take pictures whenever they saw a stone with words on it, as if the stone was something special. However, these few were obviously crazier than the rest. Holding her forehead, Gu Mingming looked coldly at the few old foxes' devotion in front of the stone tablet. After they were done with their work, Gu Mingming then said, "Under the orders of the beast deity, the esoterica engraved here is to frighten the evil spirits and protect the people. The few elders are highly respected and are the best candidates to protect it." But Gu Mingming purposely dragged out her words and sized up the anxious elders from the corner of her eyes. Seeing that they were about to pounce on her, she then continued, "But Oakley is still young after all. It seems like a grievance for the few elders to stay behind and cooperate with him. Of course, although I am the messenger of the beast deity, I am also a democratic person. I respect the opinions of the elders. If you are not willing, I will not force you." An old man was the first to kneel down and prostrate himself at Gu Mingming's feet. He said, "We are the most loyal servants of the messenger. It is our duty to share the messenger's burden. There is no grievance, no force. Protecting the esoterica is our honor. Great messenger, please grant us our wish. I am willing to stay behind and cooperate with the witch Dr. Oakley." With one taking the lead, how could the rest be willing to fall behind? Thus, Gu Mingming used 2 stones to settle these few old foxes. After a round of consolation, the elders left the meeting room with tears streaming down their faces, feeling extremely gratified. Gu Mingming heaved a long sigh of relief. She leaned against her seat tiredly. Leah stood at the side and wrapped his arm around Gu Mingming's shoulders. He wrapped his arm around her neck and gently rubbed her temples. He said, "Why do you have to entertain them personally? You can leave these matters to me." Gu Mingming looked up with a smile. "You have been working hard for half a month so that I can return to St. Nazir as soon as possible. You even have dark circles under your eyes." Leah touched his eyes instinctively and asked worriedly, "Am I ugly?" Gu Mingming chuckled. "Didn't you claim to be the most handsome male in the world? Are you worried now?" Leah pinched Gu Mingming's little nose and said, "It's all because I'm afraid that you won't like me if I'm ugly." Gu Mingming rubbed herself in Lee's arms and said, "I left everyone from the Snow Fox clan behind. Will you feel uncomfortable?" Leah paused and shook his head. "No matter how much they flatter me now and address me as the Ninth Highness, I know very well that I can no longer treat them as my own tribesmen." Gu Mingming looked up at Leah, her gaze filled with heartache. Chapter 635. Oakley frowned, looking like he had a lot on his mind. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Gu Mingming looked up at Oakley and said, "Just say what you want to say, don't hold it in and cause internal injuries." Oakley hesitated for a moment and said, "This stone tablet, is it really all right to leave it here?" What if Cole's men secretly come to snatch it? Gu Mingming chuckled and said, 36 Stratagems is just an ordinary book in my world and anyone can read it. But knowing how to read and knowing how to use are two completely different concepts. Let's not talk about the fact that the people here don't know these words. Even if they do, how much do they know? Oakley did not understand and asked, didn't you say that Cole knows how to use it? Gu Mingming looked at Leah and then at Oakley and smiled. Cole knows how to use 36 stratagems not because he knows how to read, but because his father's generation after generation memorized it and passed it down to him. He may be smart and knows how to use it, but he is obviously not mature enough. To understand these stratagems, you need to use some historical references. 36 stratagems without any historical references is like a martial arts esoterica without any internal techniques. It's just an empty shell and won't be able to kill anyone. Oakley looked at Gu Mingming, not fully understanding, then at Leah. Leah rubbed Gu Mingming's head with a doting expression, then glanced at Oakley and said, listen to Gu Mingming's arrangements, you don't need to understand, just do as I say. Oakley still felt uneasy but there was nothing he could do. After thinking for a long while, he looked up and asked, if something happens in solder that I can't handle, how do I inform you? Gu Mingming looked at the door and said softly, stop hiding, come in. After some rustling, a male with a feminine face walked into the meeting room. He only looked at Gu Mingming from the corner of his eyes and bowed politely, saying, Saintess. Snake had made her the Saintess of the Snake King Valley and announced that from the moment she took up the position, the meaning of the Saintess would be different from before. Snake had originally promised her to remove this title, but it was too late. Forget it, this title was also a memento left by Snake. Anyway, no one could force her to do anything, Saintess it be. Wabi, I sent you? Gu Mingming asked. The snake beast nodded and replied, Wabi ordered us to stay by your side. If we encounter any trouble, we are to send word back to the Snake King Valley and let them resolve it. Gu Mingming chuckled. She knew very well that Wabi only wanted to protect her because of Snake. You stay in solder to help Oakley. If you meet with any troublesome situation, you just need a little snake to send a message to Saint Nazir, Gu Mingming said. The snake beast's face darkened. It glanced at Oakley and said reluctantly, I want to guard the saint. Gu Mingming sneered and slowly activated the Snake King's pressure in her body. The snake beast trembled and knelt down. Its forehead was covered in sweat and it bit its lower lip, not daring to resist. Gu Mingming slowly retracted her pressure and said, keep your useless worries and obey my orders. The snake beast replied with a trembling voice, yes. Gu Mingming stood up and Elvis carried her up. When he passed by Oakley, Gu Mingming said, if there are no other problems, I will set off for Saint Nazir 3 days later. Chapter 636. After exiting the meeting room, she saw Huda and his brothers playing with Qixin at the entrance. When they saw Gu Mingming coming out, they all pounced on her. Mummy. Camel was the first to reach Gu Mingming. He raised his little face and asked, are we going home? Gu Mingming wanted to get down from Elvis's arms, but Elvis hugged her even tighter. He looked down at Kanwu from above and did not say a single word, but there was an aura of hurry and get lost. Gu Mingming knew that Elvis was competing with Kanwu again, but she could not embarrass him in front of his son. So she patted Kanwu's little head and replied gently, yes, we will set off in 3 days. Are you happy? Kanwu also completely ignored Elvis. He nodded and said, I'm happy. I can participate in the hunt with the big tribe on the way back. Jiaoyu also chimed in. Yes, there are not so many things to do on the way back. Daddy Leah will have time to teach me the art of deduction. Huda looked at Qixin in his arms. He smiled especially amiably and had a maturity that did not match his age. Will you wake up when we return to a familiar place? Gu Mingming looked at Qixin without saying a word. She was silently calculating in her heart. What was Cole planning by pushing Burke to her side? Everything had a motive. So what was Cole's motive? It seemed like she had to start with Burke to capture Cole. Gu Mingming turned back to look at Barit. Call Burke over. Barit nodded. He did not say a word. He just turned around and walked towards the edge of solder. Oriton followed for 2 steps before looking up at Gu Mingming. He said expressionlessly, I will go hunt and then share a meal. Gu Mingming chuckled. There are so many beauties in solder. Have you not taken a liking to any of them? Oriton did not seem to understand what Gu Mingming meant. He looked at her in a daze. He did not speak or move. Gu Mingming said, find a suitable female to start a family with. It's not a good idea to always share a meal with me. Oriton said, I am your guardian beast. I cannot start a family with other females. Gu Mingming shook her head. You don't like me, do you? Oriton lowered his head slightly as if he was thinking seriously. Then he shook his head and said, I like you. Gu Mingming was slightly surprised and asked, You like me? What do you like about me? Oriton replied very seriously, Your family's food is the best. Gu Mingming was taken aback for a moment before she suddenly laughed. Their personalities are so different, but why are they so similar in terms of gluttony? Oriton did not know what Gu Mingming was smiling about. He turned to look at Elvis and realized that his face was filled with gentleness. His pair of blue eyes curved into a curve as Gu Mingming smiled. Oriton could not really understand the feeling of having all his emotions affected by a female. He did not know if all females had this ability or only Gu Mingming had this ability. For someone like him who had almost forgotten his emotions, who knew if he could be saved if he mated with Gu Mingming? One day in the future, would she be able to smile unknowingly like Elvis? Chapter 637. Gu Mingming did not insist any further. She no longer had the passion she had when she helped Sandy and Colin build the bridge. She did not want to interfere too much in other people's lives. When Elvis carried Gu Mingming back to the stone house, Barit and Burke were already waiting at the door. Barit straightened his back when he saw Gu Mingming. His long, soldier-like face had become even more resolute in the past 2 months and he was even more taciturn. It was as if other than in front of Gu Mingming, he did not even open his mouth to speak much. I've brought her. Barit opened his mouth as if he was reporting for work, concise and to the point. With that, he returned to stand behind Elvis and continued his role as the messenger's guard. He did not speak much and did not steal the limelight. If one did not look closely, he would look like a background version of Gu Mingming. Elvis carried Gu Mingming and sat on the stone steps at the door. Leah swayed his tail and walked past Burke. He paused for a moment and chuckled. He did not say anything and just walked to the simple stove to start a fire. Gu Mingming sat in Elvis's arms lazily. She glanced sideways at Burke and smiled. 3 days later, I will be returning to St. Nazaire. You and your tribesmen can follow me back. Burke clenched his fists by the sides of his body and slowly released them. He did not dare to look straight at Gu Mingming and could only stare at her shadow that was elongated by the sun. Frowning, he replied, Can we stay in Sauter? My tribesmen are already too old, they cannot withstand the frequent travel. Gu Mingming was taken aback. You're not coming with me? Gu Mingming asked. Could it be that Cole's motive for arranging for Burke to come here was not for her but to regain control of Sauter? Burke shook his head with difficulty. I want to go with you, but if I leave, there will be no one to provide food for my tribesmen. Originally, the 2 half-orc females in our tribe could recruit family members through mating after joining a new tribe and continue to take care of our tribesmen. But Sauter did not lack females at all. How could 2 half-orc females snatch resources from the group of complete females who were at the top of the tribes? Even Maya and Sandy, who were considered average-level half-orc females, did not manage to recruit a single new member after coming to Sauter, let alone the old, weak, sick and disabled who were burdened with their entire families. Of course, Sandy was very satisfied with Colin and wouldn't give any other male a chance. Otherwise, just based on her identity as the best friend of the messenger of the beast deity, there would still be people who would be willing to mate with her. Gu Mingming nodded and did not force him. Since that's the case, I won't force you. You can go back. Burke secretly lifted his eyes and stared deeply at Gu Mingming. Her lonely appearance in the rain made him toss and turn in bed, unable to sleep. He couldn't tell if what he saw on her face that day were tears or rain, but those clear eyes were calm without a trace of emotion. It made his heart ache and made him want to protect her. If he could, he wanted to stay by her side regardless of everything. He didn't want to let her sit alone in the rain, and he didn't want her to have any time to be lonely. But, in the end, Burke only replied with a okay. He then turned around and left with heavy footsteps. Chapter 638. Leah put down the work in his hands and walked to Gu Mingming's side. He hooked Gu Mingming's chin with his slender fingers and squinted his eyes with a resentful expression. You are so familiar with his scent, why do I feel so unhappy? This meant that Gu Mingming did not smell wrongly. Chuckling, Gu Mingming glanced sideways at Barit and said, Seems like you have to stay behind this time. Barit turned his head and looked at the direction where Burke had disappeared to. Stay behind and watch him? Gu Mingming shook her head and said, Stay behind and help me protect Oakley. If he loses control, at least the two of you have to run back to St. Nazir alive." Barit retracted his gaze and looked at Gu Mengmeng. He pursed his lips and finally replied, "All right." But Leah did not give up. He pinched Gu Mengmeng's chin back and looked straight into her eyes. "What do you plan to do after you catch him?" Gu Mengmeng laughed softly and said, "I also don't know. How far can I go for my son?" Leah raised his head and asked, "What if he requests to be your beast pet? Will you agree to him for Qishuan's sake?" Gu Mengmeng looked up and stared straight into Li's eyes. "Beast pet? I'm afraid he doesn't have the guts to make such a request." Leah continued asking, "What if he does? What do you plan to do?" Gu Mengmeng's shoulders trembled as she smiled sinisterly. Her gaze was cold as she said, "If he does, I'll agree to him. Let's see if he has the life to enjoy the poison in my body." Gu Mengmeng frowned as she felt a slight pain in her chin and shoulder. But she did not resist. Elvis's voice exploded above her head like a subwoofer, hitting Gu Mengmeng's heart with every word. "I'm not dead yet." Leah held Gu Mengmeng's little face. There was a smile on his devilish and fairy-like face, but why did it look like a layer of ice had formed on his smile? "I'm still alive too." Gu Mengmeng smiled embarrassedly. I know. I was just saying casually." Li's smile grew colder and colder. Even though his voice was calm, it gave off an oppressive feeling as if a storm was brewing. It was as if the air pressure within a radius of 100 meters around Leah had been pulled down. His body leaned forward slightly and his entire body enveloped Gu Mengmeng. His long and narrow eyes were filled with a dangerous and fatal seductive aura. His dark red lips parted slightly, bringing with it a unique fragrance, just like the flowers on the other shore, causing one's imagination to run wild. "The two of us are not so useless that we need to sacrifice our own females to solve the problem." Yes. Leah was only a third-level beast, right? Gu Mengmeng was uncertain for a moment. Was her power above Li's now? Gu Mengmeng. Gu. Mengmeng is and Gu us. Her lips were sealed by Elvis and his tongue entered her mouth, robbing her of all the fragrance. Gu Mengmeng felt a numbing sensation on her neck. She glanced sideways and realized that Leah was nibbling on her neck. His strength was neither light nor heavy. It was slightly painful but not injurious. It was filled with lust and punishment. After a long while, when Gu Mengmeng's entire body turned limp, the two of them released her in unison. Chapter 639. Barit is still watching. "You two. Stop fooling around." Gu Mengmeng could not even complete her sentence. Elvis and Leah were messing around with her body as if they had planned it beforehand, causing her heart to beat erratically. Barit silently lowered his head and said, "I'll go to Oakley's and inform him." Barit only left Gu Mengmeng with a resolute backview. He liked Gu Mengmeng, he had liked her ever since she came to the tribe. But he knew that protecting her as a guard was already the closest he could get. Elvis and Leah would not give him a chance to improve. If he was too greedy, the two of them would definitely not tolerate him. So, knowing when to leave was the only way for him to stay by her side. After Barit left, Elvis and Leah finally let Gu Mengmeng off after she repeatedly begged for mercy. "Don't say such things again. Or else I will personally kill Qishuan," Elvis said coldly. Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips, her gaze cold. This was the second time he said he wanted to kill her sons. Previously it was Kanwu, this time it was Qishuan. Why were her sons so lowly in his eyes? Elvis seemed to know what Gu Mengmeng was thinking about. He straightened her body and made her sit face to face with him. Then he said cautiously, "Compared to you, everything else in this world is insignificant. So is the tribe, so is my sons, and so am I. You have become like this because of them, and that is the limit of my tolerance. If you continue to place yourself as a sacrifice for them, I can only kill them personally to protect you. If you dare to touch my sons, I will hate you." Gu Mengmeng's face was filled with anger as she said unhappily. Elvis smiled bitterly and said, "I know. If you hate me, I will live a life worse than death. But compared to you, my pain is not worth mentioning." Gu Mengmeng lowered her head and looked at her own knees. This pair of legs were exchanged for by Snake's life. She knew better than anyone else how stubborn the males in the beast world were in love, wasn't that so? "If you want, Leah and I are willing to risk our lives to accompany you for one night." Elvis hooked Gu Mengmeng's lips and kissed her lips. Different from the punishment kiss just now, this kiss was extremely gentle. After the kiss, Gu Mengmeng even felt that her brain was lacking oxygen and her breathing was not smooth. Elvis hugged her shoulders and placed her on his chest. While giving her support, he did not let her discover the wound in his eyes. If you want a few more partners, Barit, Oriton and Ian are all good choices. But, don't let it be Cole. He's not worthy. Gu Mingming leaned into Elvis's arms and chuckled. I know, I don't want any more partners and I won't take Cole in as a beast pet. It's just something I said in a moment of anger. Why take it so seriously? Leah squatted in front of Gu Mingming with one knee on the ground. He placed Gu Mingming's little hand by his lips and kissed it. Then he looked straight into Gu Mingming's eyes and said, if it can make you happy, we don't mind having a few more family members. It didn't matter if it was a partner or a pet as long as it could make you happy. But, don't let it be Cole, he's too dangerous and dirty. Gu Mingming smiled and said, you and Elvis are enough for me. I don't need any more partners or beast pets. Barit, Oriton, Ian, I don't want any of them. Cole. Needless to say. Don't worry, alright? Aside from the topic, that you're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.